Okay, so I guess we can get started. Okay, I'd like to call this meeting to order. It's the regular meeting of the Garden City Planning Commission. It's Thursday, May 8th, 2025 at 6:32 p.m. Our first order of business is the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag. If everyone would stand, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Be seated. Would the secretary take the roll call, please?
Chairperson May.
Here.
Commissioner Steenberg.
Aye.
Commissioner Walls. Not yet. Commissioner King.
Here.
Commissioner Williams.
Here.
And Commissioner Bazzi. He's not present. You do have a quorum with 4 members, Mr. Chair.
Okay, thank you. Next, we need approval of the agenda. If someone cares to make a motion.
Make a motion to approve the agenda.
Support.
Motion made and supported. Any discussion on the motion? Take the roll, please.
Commissioner Williams.
Aye.
Commissioner King.
Aye.
Commissioner Steenberg.
Aye.
Chairperson May.
Aye.
Motion carries.
Next, we need approval of the minutes from the regular meeting of April 10th, 2025.
I'll make a motion to approve the regular minutes of April 10th, 2025.
Support.
Any corrections or discussion on the motion? Take the roll, please.
Commissioner Williams.
Aye.
Commissioner King.
Aye.
Commissioner Steenberg.
Aye.
Chairperson May.
Aye. Next, we have public comment on non-agenda items only. If there is someone here who wishes to comment on a non-agenda item, they can come forward and address the commission. Seeing no one, we'll move on to our business items. First item, EPL 25-0013, a request to establish a mixed-use building at 29317, 29299, and 29217 Ford Road, and rezone the site from CBD, Central Business District, to PUD, Planned Unit Development. Okay, we'll start out with our consultant's report.
Good evening, Commissioners. Tonight we are here to consider a PUD at the southeast corner of Ford Road in Middlebelt. So the applicant, the site itself actually is comprised of 4 tax parcels, the total approximately 1.61 acres in area. There are 3 structures on the site. The first at 29317 Ford Road, and furthest west on the property is colloquially known as the Orange Jewelry Building. It's approximately 4,200 square foot building footprint. To the east of that building is a 2-story mixed-use building that has an approximately 5,500 square foot footprint. And then to the east of that building is the Mazzoni Building, typically is what we've called it in the past. And it is a 1-story multi-tenant commercial building that has about a 9,700 square foot footprint. And it is actually 1 story, even despite its height. But the site itself also actually has a 97-space parking lot to the rear that has access via Pardo. And the applicant is proposing to demolish all of the structures on the site and then construct a 4-story mixed-use building. It would have a 20,000 square foot footprint right at the northwest corner of the site. So along the building wall, building 0 lot line along Ford Road and along Middlebelt. It would have, the site itself would have about 8,500 square foot of open space and a 94-space parking lot. So the building would have 20,000 square feet of ground floor commercial retail space, and then the top 3 floors are proposed to be occupied by 60 apartments. So as proposed, this type of structure is not in compliance with our current central business district standards, which this is zoned. So the applicant is proposing a planned unit development process. And this process allows the city to modify these underlying standards of the central business district, which is the current zoning, in order to permit a project that will provide a recognizable and substantial benefit to the community. These modifications by the applicant include a reduction in the parking requirement, a reduction in the open space, modification to the parking lot configuration requirements, an increase in building height, and an increase in residential density. And I'll go over those specific modifications in a moment. We haven't had a PUD in a very long time in the city, so just to review with you the review and approval process. It's basically a two-step process. One is where the city considers this PUD rezoning and the development plan proposed. So the first step involves an amendment of the zoning map. The site would be amended to PUD, and it also involves the approval of a planned development plan. We would, in order to just specify that the fact that the zoning ordinance doesn't specifically indicate the entire content that is required within the plan development plan. Typically, the plan development plan, in my experience, includes all the information necessary for the Planning Commission and the council to be assured of the detail you need to make the determination that this meets the intent and review and approval criteria of the PUD process. So the information that is within that plan development plan should be what you need in order to determine that this does meet our intent as a PUD. So in order to go through this process, it first involves what we'll be having tonight, which is a public hearing to discuss these options. And then ultimately, at some point, the Planning Commission would make a recommendation to City Council, whether approval of the PUD rezoning and approval of the plan development plan. And then the City Council holds their own public hearing, and then they will ultimately decide on whether the site is rezoned to PUD and whether the plan development plan is approved. So that's all involving in the first step. And then the second step is final site plan approval. The second step, the applicant will be required to come back to the Planning Commission and have a site plan that is detailed within our zoning ordinance and has all of the specific requirements as we normally have for construction of a project. So this would include all the details we normally require for a final site plan approval. And just as you gentlemen are aware, that typically our final site plans involve the specifics of the architecture, the floor plans, and then with regard to the final site plan configuration, landscaping, separate landscaping plan, separate lighting plan, and then any additional information that is listed within the zoning ordinance. So that's the review and approval process. I've prepared a review letter for you with regards to the specific criteria involving planned unit development. And these issues include, first, looking at the eligibility criteria, making sure this site is eligible, and then delving into the project design standards. And then I've also outlined for you the specific approval criteria listed in the zoning ordinance that you should consider when you ultimately make your recommendation to City Council. First, with regards to eligibility, the site we do believe is eligible to be considered as a PUD. We wouldn't bring it before you if it wasn't considered eligible. They meet the minimum frontage and size requirements. The capacity of the adjacent public utilities is sufficient to accommodate this proposed structure and these proposed uses. It's compatible, we believe, with the plan development intent, which is to not only remove any older structures or structures that are no longer viable, but also allow for the construction of new structures that are up to modern standards. We do believe in the end, there would be a substantial benefit in terms of economic impact by promoting a higher level of design and investment in the city, and the applicant is in control of all the property. So we do believe the site is eligible. One thing I wanted to point out is that one of the aspects that goes through this with regards to eligibility is that phrase of recognizable and substantial benefit. The planned development shall result in a recognizable and substantial benefit to the ultimate users of the project and to the community. This is done specifically by fully implementing the goals of the master plan, but projects that also exhibit exemplary site and building design also provide a readily recognizable benefit to the city. So our review is based on making sure that we continue that it has emphasizing that if we're maintaining and implementing the goals and objectives of the master plan, and also making sure that the site design and the building design are of a high quality that will provide that benefit to the city. So as mentioned, we do believe the project is eligible. When we look at the project design standards, beginning on page 4, this location is, PUDs are permitted throughout the city, so the location is appropriate. The permitted uses that are being submitted are permitted by right in the CBD district, so having a mixed-use building is appropriate for PUD. And then getting into the modifications. As noted, within the CBD district, the maximum building height right now is 2.5 stories or 35 feet, and the applicant is proposing a 4-story building. When it comes to density requirements, the site is permitted 28 dwelling units under our current standards, and the applicant is proposing 60. And based on parking, based on it being part of the downtown and being with the parking in the downtown requirements and what's allowed under those standards, normally this would require 157 parking spaces. But one thing we want to point out is that, that standard is based on 2.2 parking spaces per dwelling unit, which it really is in the end. We've been dealing with this with some other aspects of multifamily development in the city, and it really is an old and outdated standard for 2.2 parking spaces. It's no longer required in modern zoning ordinances, and it's definitely no longer, 2.2 parking spaces is not something that's required in downtowns throughout Metro Detroit. In McKenna's experience throughout Michigan, that parking standard is significantly lower than that. But we do want to make sure to emphasize that parking needs to be able to function for the site. It's not about reducing it for the sake of reduction. It's about making sure that it's reflective of modern data and reflective of modern standards for that. So the applicant is actually proposing right now 97 parking spaces on the site. And then there is a requirement for open space. The ordinance requires 21,000 square feet of permeable land area, and the applicant is proposing 8,500. So when it comes to these design standards and the aspect of a PUD, the issue is the city is allowed to grant modifications. It's allowed to use regulatory flexibility to achieve a type of development that meets the intent of the master plan and the goals and objectives, and then creates something that is of an exemplary design or benefit to the city. So modifications of those, like I mentioned, modifications of existing base standards are permitted for a PUD, but only if they result in a higher quality development than would be possible without the modifications. These modifications will result in a 4-story mixed-use building in the downtown, which is consistent with the master plan goals and objectives. And, this type of building has not been possible under our current standards. We've had these development standards for decades, and we have not yet seen this type of building yet created in Garden City. So a PUD would allow for something that is part of the goals and objectives of the downtown. But one thing we want to point out is that the most effective way to ensure that these modifications that are being asked for do result in a high-quality development is by specifying the building and site design standards that are to be constructed. Those can be done through something as such as a detailed design requirements. The applicant, you have a rendering in front of you in addition to the plot plan. And this rendering shows a building that has an overall building style we would describe as a Midwest urban aesthetic. It has utilizes stone and red brick facades, double-hung windows. It's an attractive building. They've taken cues from the administration. The use of the light-colored stone on the ground floor with an arched first floor roof line at that corner with a beveled corner, and then they even put a clock above the door. That's something that echoes the elements of the Orange Jeweler building, of the old City Hall that's there currently. So it echoes that design in the new building. Then it also has vertical columns that create, a subtle articulation that is very important in a large building. It minimizes the mass and scale, and it also leads up to a very attractive roof line and cornice. It actually has, the rendering shows balconies for the residents, but that they're recessed behind the walls. So therefore, they can be something that provides a benefit to residents. They can go outside and have some fresh air and some light enter their building, but they aren't going to be overhanging or directly impacted by the traffic along Ford and Middle Belt. So it's a way to create that urban atmosphere without necessarily having it intrude upon their residents. It's something that they could experience if they wanted to. However, we do believe that to ensure the final design in this rendering maintain these features, we recommend that any approval includes a detailed list of these architectural elements, including the materials involved, the elements and characteristics, and details that contribute to the design as part of that development plan. It's something that could be detailed and listed on that site plan or on that rendering. So all the elements that I just listed in terms of materials and colors could just be listed by the applicant. Other things to improve this existing building, we believe, would be the use of stone window lintels at the base of those windows, utilizing brick soldier courses, possibly also for the windowsills or aprons, a stone stylized cornice roof line. They're proposing, the rendering seems to be utilizing a brick, which is very hard to do. I don't think it's feasible with doing that as a part of a roof element. So possibly utilizing stone or some other kind of high-quality material along the roof line would be appropriate. Specifying how much the columns project from that wall to make sure that we maintain that articulation is important. Even specifying something as simple as making sure that these are double-hung windows with muttons or grills within the windows. Those are details for a window and an aspect to contribute to the overall style of the building. So that's one of our main recommendations, is to make sure that we have those details involved. Some other aspects of the residential density, just to conclude with those, beginning on the next page. Residential density modifications are permitted by the PUD when those densities will not adversely impact water and sewer service, stormwater drainage, road capacity, traffic, and the parks and the character of the area. As we've talked about briefly in the letter, this is located along Ford and Middle Belt, which has our direct access to sewer and water mains. And these mains are designed to accommodate the highest density of development achievable in the city. They're also directly adjacent to Ford and Middle Belt, which are the primary regional corridors for traffic. If there's any roads that could handle traffic from an apartment building, it would be Ford and Middle Belt. We don't have any other roads that are designed of a higher traffic volume to accommodate that. So if anywhere, this is where it would be. And one thing we just want to point out, too, is that once again, the master plan envisions this as the heart of the downtown area and developed with a pedestrian-oriented urban character. The proposed density and these number of units is typical of similar regional downtowns found throughout Metro Detroit. And we don't believe it will not adversely impact the area. The intent is to have residents live in your downtown to shop and frequent your businesses. Finally, things to point out with regard to the design, the open space requirements. Once again, to point out that the project typically would require 21,000 square feet of permeable land area. The standard is, what we believe that standard and that number of volume, the amount of land area that calculation results in is more typical of a suburban residential style development. 21,000 square feet is nearly half an acre. That's a pretty decent sized park for 60 people. So, directly there. So it's not something that you normally find in an urban area for just one development. The applicant is proposing 8,500 square feet of open space. This includes a small public plaza area to the east of the building along Ford and to the south of the building on Middlebelt. So they will have small little parklets, is what you could call them. They have the ability for someone to sit outside and wait for someone to show up, wait for someone to visit them or that sort of thing, a meeting area. So it is typical of an urban style rather than suburban. So we do believe the modification of that urban, some modification to the open space is warranted, given that we're proposing a urban style development. And then other things in getting to design, we're starting to reiterate ourselves. It goes over utilities. Once again, right against Ford and Middlebelt, they have the main utilities in Maine, but we will point out that there's a DTE easement and overhead utility wires run east-west to the rear of the existing structures. So the applicant really will need to indicate how they intend to accommodate that existing easement. We note that because previous development in the area, specifically the McDonald's, kind of was held up without having a clear, thought-out awareness of that easement and making accommodation to DTE to make sure that they would accommodate it. Finally, one of the other aspects I just want to point out when it comes to the design standards is pedestrian vehicular circulation. They're going to maintain the sidewalk system along Ford and along Middlebelt. They're proposing a sidewalk adjacent to the building, so a person could be able to walk the entire perimeter of the building. And then they're maintaining the vehicular access configuration. Vehicles would access this site still only from Pardo. They're not proposing any kind of curb cuts on Ford or Middlebelt. It'd be the same configuration with parking in the back. That's something that we strive for and is a requirement of the downtown, of the Central Business District. They're not changing that. Parking will be to the rear of the building. So, and it's not going to be a change to residents, old or new residents, for this site. So those are the aspects with regards to the project design. Finally, at the beginning of page 6, I list out the standards for approval to consider. And basically, it's a reiteration of all the other aspects we've been talking about. We do believe this entire project as proposed is in conformance with the planned development concept, because once again, this will allow for the construction of an economically viable mixed-use building. That's one of the reasons for the 4 stories. They're going to need additional revenue from those units to develop a building of this size and style. They're actually going to be needing other aspects that they're going to go through later with other entities to make this economically viable for themselves. So this is just one aspect, the height. But, starting to reiterate myself and reiterating the letter, this is something that has been planned for in the downtown and has been the intent to have a higher density residential mixed use in the downtown. And we've seen this occur in other communities in the area too, just to point out. Other communities have attempted to achieve this type of pedestrian downtown that used to exist, and they have achieved that, but they really only achieved that level of activity, and not only that, but successful businesses. They only get those successful businesses when you have a destination and residents in the area. And typically they involve these kind of buildings. They involve 4-story, 5-story buildings to make it economically viable. So that's why, honestly, that's why we're undergoing a master plan right now, looking at our housing standards, looking whether they should be changed. But that's also why we have the PUD, is to allow someone to ask us ask the city, if modifications warrant. So with regards to the criteria of approval, as I mentioned, they're all listed out right there. Once again, we talk about public service, we talk about impact on traffic, accommodations for pedestrian traffic, and then compatibility with the master plan. Those are criteria to consider for the approval, and we do believe that, as proposed, the applicant, this type of project could meet those conditions of approval. So in the end, we do advise the Planning Commission to recommend to City Council the approval of the plan unit development rezoning and the approval of the plan development plan contingent upon the applicant submitting a revised plan development plan that includes any building and site design specifications listing that is as detailed by the Planning Commission. And then the applicant including one other aspect in my letter as regards to stormwater management. We want to make sure that every aspect of that is dealt with during this process. So we would just recommend approval contingent upon they comply with the Wayne County standards during final site plan approval. Applicant including modifications to DTE easement that are acceptable to both DTE and the applicant during final site plan, and then obtaining final site plan approval from the Planning Commission. While that's a requirement of the ordinance, we just wanted to reiterate that as part of this. So apologies for that lengthy review, but this is a major project for the city, and I just wanted to make sure that go over those details for you. So I can take any questions at any time.
Yeah, I have a question. Well, number one, I had a question about the size of the property, because in your review letter, you say it's 1.61 acres, and in the applicant's letter, it says it's 2.61 acres, which is correct.
So, the site is 1.61 on the north side of Pardo. They also own another parcel on the south side of Pardo that, when you add together, is 2.61. Their original application was considering including something on that southern parcel, but at this time, they're proposing that as a future phase. So it wouldn't be under that additional acre on the south side while they own it is not at this time proposed for development.
Okay. Second, I have some comments about the parking. You mentioned that you feel that our ordinance is old and outdated and no longer required, but our parking ordinance for multifamily housing is very similar to most of the communities around us. Livonia and Canton have the exact same parking requirements. Westland and Dearborn have a tiered system where one-bedroom apartments are required to have 1.5 spaces and two-bedroom 2 spaces. And the only one that's significantly lower would be Dearborn Heights, where 1 and 2 bedrooms are 1.5. And I'm thinking even with that amount of reduction, we're still woefully short.
So I would say that you're absolutely correct. Those are the standards that are in the other municipalities. But then when you look at the style of development in those communities, that's why they have that style. Livonia right now doesn't have a downtown. Livonia is proposing a downtown. They're going to be looking at changing theirs. Canton doesn't have a downtown. They have the Cherry Hill development, but that was done under a they call it planned development. Not planned unit development. They call it a PDD, planned development district, is how they do it. And that was done a long time ago. But they actually do that throughout the city. And then, as you mentioned, other communities that have more of a downtown who have a standard. So while some modification, I wanted to bring that consideration just so you could look at this and possibly consider a modification as acceptable. I will say that, when it comes to that standard that they're proposing, it is aggressive with regards to the amount of density. I'd be interested to know what the applicant is thinking in terms of, if you have 60 units, they're still, while they're on Ford and Middlebelt and they have access to bus routes, chances are every resident there is going to want to have at least one car. So, I'd be interested to know how the residents' relationship to the parking is going to be. And say if, for example, they were one parking designated for each housing unit, then that only leaves 37 spaces for the commercial. Now, whether that's enough, that's a pretty...
You've got 20,000 square feet of commercial.
Exactly, yeah, that's a lot.
And that's a lot. And in our ordinance, retail stores are required to have one space for every 150 feet.
That's right.
So that's like 133 parking spaces by itself.
Exactly, yes.
I mean, if we fill up the lot with our residential parking, where are the people that want to go to the store going to park?
Right. So that is definitely something that I was looking at with regards to this type of modification. One aspect of that is, you look at 20,000 square foot. We also have a standard for what we call a shopping center. The shopping center standard allows one parking space for every 250 square feet of retail area. And that's actually net floor area, not gross. So typically, if you have a 20,000 square foot building, you're going to need back of the house areas for your heating and cooling equipment and garages. So typically, and within the ordinance, we do take out, if the applicant doesn't provide a a floor plan of that 20,000 square foot, we take out automatically 20%, so for that back of the house. And then that's the standard within the zoning ordinance that we apply. So it would be 18,000 square foot applied under 250, and I believe that comes out to 67 or something like that. So if you did that, then you're looking at least at, and let me make sure that's right, that's correct. You would be looking at least maybe possibly needing another 30 parking spaces to meet that kind of standard.
If we're only giving one to each apartment unit.
Correct. Now that's a two-tier, that's a two-phased modification, if you will. One, allowing only one parking space per apartment, and then two, having this application of the shopping center standard. So that's about 67, 70 parking spaces. So if you got 37
It's still
on
about
site,
double of what they're proposing.
well, if you had 60 for the parking for the
I mean, they're
apartments,
proposing 30-some spaces
and then
for,
37, yeah, only 34, then you would need at least another 30 somewhere else. And they do have the fourth lot, the lot on the south side. So that's something. And then, as I know this is, once again, new to us, and something like this is not, I'd like to say that every community has something that automatically works for them all the time. But if any person here has ever visited downtown Plymouth or downtown Northville, the parking isn't exactly
and yet they
100%
have
easy.
huge parking lots behind their stores on Main
that's the other-
Street, and they also
They
have a parking structure,
Exactly, yes, they have a parking structure.
which is something that many of the other communities around here, like Dearborn and Royal Oak and Birmingham,
Right.
they all have parking structures.
Right.
They may have different requirements.
A lot of them have parking on the street, too.
Exactly, that's the other aspect.
Or about.
No, there's no parking available there.
Right. But that is another aspect of it, too, is that the community that wants to have these type of downtowns, wants to have this type of building in their community, some aspect of the site is eventually benefited from the adjacent, from development from the DDA or from the city for on-street parking or parking structures. There are definitely, I have some clients that have parking problems, but the reason they have parking problems is because they don't have a structure yet. So they have constant people coming to their downtown, but then they have parking issues all the time. So we're trying to maximize parking. So it's one of those things where, honestly, it's a chicken and an egg thing, because parking structures are not cheap. Those communities that have them have utilized DDAs, but they have property values in the DDAs that can support TIF, that can support that. And, so it's one of those aspects that is a very good discussion to have, especially at the beginning, but then it's a matter of eventually trying to understand what approach the city would like to take to this issue, because it will be an issue. will the city look to creating the development and creating the land values that could then support that in the future? Or is it something the city is willing to have on their own to create first, which I can tell you 95% of cities don't do that in Michigan, just because it's a substantial investment. But to get it back to the specific question on this particular site, it is about right now what could accommodate it and what would make it economically viable and also economically, functional, making the parking functional for all the people that visit it and also the property areas around it. So that's why I do think the benefit of them having a lot to the south is something you could consider to allow for at least a minimal of more.
I think we could reduce our requirements, but we're going to need more.
Exactly.
So
Right.
looking at that property on the south side of Part O, I think would be an option.
Yeah, as something. And what that number is, you would have to determine something that you feel the city is comfortable with in terms of modifying, because all your numbers are correct, Fred, with regards to those modifications. But looking at this, we do come up with this problem, and we do have other issues. And other aspects that we don't have in our ordinance that other communities deal with is hours of operation. Sometimes it doesn't always, it probably won't work on this site because we want to have businesses in that 20,000 square foot that are active more in the evening hours. Normally what you have for parking modification is if the residents are gone during the day, the businesses at the bottom, if they were all office space, then office workers could come park in those 94 parking spaces and then they'd go home. But as an urban area, an urban center that we're trying to create, in theory, we'll also have people there at nighttime hours because hopefully there are restaurants down there or shops that people want to frequent at night, which would,
Start talking restaurants, you need even more parking.
right, yeah. So,
Well,
there's
okay.
other aspects to that, but then, yes, absolutely, like you said, you have to consider that right now, since this is the first one, how to slowly allow modification that is acceptable to the city for those parking standards.
Okay. Any other comments from the commission about?
Well, I had a question about the parking in that, I know it's only a few spaces, but I think, Mr. Ortega, your report says 97, and this sheet says 94.
Apologies, existing is 97, proposed is 94. Yeah, and 94 is the proposed version. So if mine says 97 is proposed, it's not. It's 97 is the old, 94 is new.
And the only other question I was going to ask is about just like the fire marshal, as far as this being a taller, I know we have the towers next door, but how would we know that the city is equipped to handle something like this?
I had informal conversations with the fire marshal, and I do believe that we have the accommodations, but we can also request formal review and a review letter to you to confirm the capacity of the fire department.
Yeah, another way to supplement our fire protection would be internal protection systems too.
Yes,
And that's something that would have to be discussed.
absolutely. Well, I would think it would be required by the fire code.
Pardon me?
We have mutual aid as well.
Yes, we do, yeah.
But yes, every aspect, when it gets to final site plan, every aspect of the internal layout of that building, for what is required for mixed use and, fire department connections, all those kind of things that are going to be necessary within the building for adequate, I believe or whichever international fire code we're a part, it will have to comply with.
Yeah. Anything else?
Me, I would just like to see a resolution on the parking before we proceed, before, they build and we have a problem. I'd rather it be settled now.
Yeah, I
Oh,
agree.
absolutely.
Did you have anything else?
That's it.
Okay.
Yeah, I have a concern about the parking too. You have 60 units here. At an absolute minimum, we need to devote about 60 to 90 spots just for the people that are going to live there.
Yeah, and we've only
And
got
that leaves
94.
nothing for anything else.
Right.
So we have two wild cards. We have open space, which we may or may not have flexibility to possibly put more parking there, and we have an acre that's just across the street, and by being across the street, I mean it's 40 foot away.
Yeah,
Not any kind of significant difference. And there is a potential that that could be made into a private lot specifically for residents of these structures and be marked accordingly. And that would, myself, I would sooner be in the outlot than crammed up against the building with all the other cars. So parking is a definite consideration, but we have the two wild cards. We have the potential for open space variability and also another acre within 40 feet of this.
Yeah.
And we have to look at that because.
One other thing that I thought about with the open space issue is, well, it's quite a bit short of what we're asking for
Right,
in the ordinance.
move it across the
They,
street.
in the letter, no, in the letter that we received from the applicant, he mentioned, I believe it was in that letter, he mentioned the possibility of having rooftop access for the residents, which would it's not permeable space, but it would give them recreational access to an open area.
Not
that's something-
year-round, but
Right.
you
Now,
wouldn't
you-
sit out on the corner year-round either if there was a foot
No.
of snow out there.
No,
So,
but you're not
yes,
going to set out in the park year-round either.
Exactly, exactly.
But we can talk about that.
So that's a third wild card.
Yeah.
Really. But parking, we don't have enough.
Okay, well, let's move on then and have the applicant, did you have anything else, Mr.
No, sir.
Ortega?
Nope,
Okay.
that's it.
Then the next item would be a presentation by the applicant. Do we have a representative for the applicant here, or?
So
Would you introduce yourself, please?
my name is Elber Abbas with A4 Holdings GC.
I'm Daniel Roten with Fishbeck. I'm the engineer for the project.
So I believe, you know, we've all come to the conclusion that, you know, the project aligns with the city goals with economic revitalization, community benefits, sustainable development. We can get into that later, but we're, you know, pursuing talks with industries like Pace, who make buildings energy efficient and things like that in terms of windows, insulation, HVAC units and everything. So we're trying to make it as, you know, green as possible. In terms of the traffic and infrastructure planning, we've already established that we're not asking for any more entrances off of Middle Belt or Ford Road. So I don't believe that anyone over here has any problems or concerns in regards to that and in regards to the traffic impact. In regards to the design compatibility, we've went a couple rounds with this, and I believe that, you know, from what I'm hearing is that you guys are happy or okay with the design that we are proposing with the different aspects that Mario talked about in terms of, you know, the red brick and the lighter colored limestone, if you may, on the bottom with the clock tower and everything. So I believe our concern right now is the parking availability.
That seems to be the main
I think
hangup.
that's the main concern.
Yeah.
And we don't want to develop something that is not going to be beneficial for our commercial or our residential tenants, because in the end, it'll impact our final, you know, ROI, if you may, to try to maintain, you know, people that are going to stay there long-term, people that are going to want to do business out of there. I had previously proposed, and I don't believe it's within the city's scope, that the acre that's on the backside, we were planning on developing some more units back there. It doesn't have to be anything crazy, but in the meantime, if parking is an issue, and that's what's going to stop us from pursuing this goal. I know, in terms of green space, currently there is no green space on the property. So, what we're proposing, I think fits and accommodates the green space that would be necessary or needed for this type of development in a downtown area. But looking at that parcel, that 1 acre parcel, what I had proposed previously in private discussions was that, the parking structures are obviously expensive. And it's not something that we can take on alone. And I don't know if it's within the city's line of direction that they're able to take on right now, but we were willing to allow the city to build a parking structure that wouldn't only accommodate for a downtown for us, but it would accommodate for a downtown for others as well on our property. But to move this along further and just try to get, some sort of conclusion and resolution so that we can, move forward, what I would be willing to propose is that, on the side closest, the side that's on Pardo Road, we can devise some parking spots there temporarily, and when the city's ready, we can, possibly build so that other people can utilize it as well. And if not, we'll just utilize it for ourselves, but we're not gonna go up. We're just gonna, do flat level, ground level parking, possibly add, I'm looking at the size of this, the width of this parcel, and I think that you can probably fit, 25 to 30 more spaces without taking over the entire 1 acre. And then this way, in a future development, if we wanted to build 6, condo units or something along the John Hawk side with the parking on the side, we can, utilize that and then add additional parking at that point.
I think there might be room for both, actually.
Yeah. So, I mean, we're here to work with you guys. We just, honestly, we just want to, get some sort of direction and be able to move forward. If that's a stipulation, we can designate a certain amount of parking for right now to help make this work. We were hoping that we would do it later, but if that's a stipulation, let's not hold it up.
Yeah, we need to include that in the initial plan, I believe.
Okay.
But I think that's a real workable solution. What we have to do is decide on how much more parking we need to make this viable.
Yes, absolutely.
First of all, do you know how many 1 or 2 bedroom units are going to be in the building?
There might be a few 2 units, but most 90, I would assume, do we have anything pertaining to that right now?
Of the count, no.
Yeah. What we're trying to drive is more, young business entrepreneurs to come live in the downtown area. We're not looking for big families. Obviously, big families are going to require more cars. So there might be a handful of the 2 units, but we don't mind keeping it 1 unit, to be totally honest. But you might want a couple, a few 2 units out of the 60, you might want 10 of them to be 2 units.
Okay.
Are you looking at individual, other than 1 and 2 bedroom, something lesser than that? As
You mean like efficiency studios or anything like that?
We're definitely some studios and 1 bedrooms. That's mainly what we're proposing.
But you're saying at this point, you don't have a
So,
set of numbers in mind for those items?
If I may, one of the just generic aspects of this is that looking at it for the size of the units themselves, While they're considering, they're going to do what they need in terms of their market analysis to determine what's viable for the market. But just looking at the numbers, if you have a 20,000 square foot floor plate, typically 5 to 8% of that is taken up in hallways. So if you have something like that, take out the hallways and everything, you're looking at about an average of about 910, 920 square foot per unit. Now, how they divvy it up for themselves and everything, and if they need to utilize more, and I'm using a very generic estimate,
Yeah.
but, that's what you're looking at as an average. So they definitely could go smaller units. I mean, but the market itself is, we're going to be new to this. Our area will be new to this, and so it'll be interesting to see.
So most of
But
our
they can-
units will probably be around 750 to 800 square feet.
There you go.
Studio and one bedroom,
Yes.
Yeah,
sounds like.
okay, I was just
So
trying
we
to...
might, I mean, honestly, we may not even end up with 60 units once we, put pencil to paper. We'd like to get as many units as we can, to be totally honest, but there's definitely hallways and common areas that are going to be implemented in the building as well.
What's your thoughts on rooftop access?
I don't have much thought on it. I mean, anything to get the project moving at this point. If we have to, create some rooftop access, I don't see that being an issue.
I think it'd be an excellent adjunct to your project, being as how there's absolutely zero that exists now in this
Yeah.
city. And there's not a whole bunch in the immediate area until you get downtown, Ann Arbor, Ferndale, Royal Oak.
Right.
So that would be something, I would think that'd be a unique drawing card to have that access available. Not
Ye-
just access, but to have a rooftop climate available.
Yeah, we're not opposed to that at all.
And that could also potentially
Free up some
free
green
up
space.
a little bit of ground space, although
Yeah, I don't know how much
Well,
it's going to
you're
free up.
less than
because we
what's
really-
required now, but
Yeah, I think we still need what's proposed for the ground space,
right.
and that would be in addition to that.
Well,
I was thinking
I think if anything,
possibly
it
more
might-
here and less here, or move this to there.
Looking at the plans, the only thing that I can see that we would be able to free up in green space, because we'd like to keep the park over there on the side, and then everything else is kind of like, directing, parking in between the parking spots. The only spot would be just a few spots over there by the dumpster, if we moved the dumpster all the way to the end and enclosed it. And then you would probably free up about, 3 or 4 spots.
Yeah, I was only asking about the number of bedrooms in that out. I was trying to visualize how it would affect the parking requirements.
Yeah,
If you were
so-
going to have more two-bedrooms, it would probably require more parking.
Honestly, our initial thoughts were there were going to be studios and 1-bedrooms, but I would assume that after you go through the process, you might want to add a few of the 2-bedrooms,
Yeah, you might have 10 maybe,
if that.
if that, okay.
Yeah, but we'd be open, I mean, we would be open based on the, parking stipulations that you provide us to, dedicate certain amounts to that, whether it's 5 spaces or, 5 units or, or 10 units, whatever it may be. But we're open to that.
You have a tremendous amount of frontage on the busiest intersection on M153. How many retail spaces are you envisioning at this point?
It's hard to say because it's going to depend on the tenant, and we want it obviously to be kind of mixed use. We're not looking for all restaurants. We're looking for, a mixed use with boutiques, some professional, buildings, whether it's a dental practice or, a medical practice. And, we'd obviously like to have a restaurant and possibly something to complement it with, like coffee or dessert or something. Kind of like what you see in the downtown, Dearborn area. But that's more, when you go downtown Dearborn, you're looking more, there's a lot of restaurants, but there's a lot of people that, it's a different base over there. They go out a lot.
Well, here's what I'm looking at. We're looking at making a decision based upon, I don't know how many studios, how many one-bedroom, how many two-bedroom, or how many retail spaces. I don't know how I can make a decision based upon not having any kind of legitimate
Any
numbers
numbers,
for
huh?
any of that.
Yeah.
I
Well,
mean,
we can only look at the square footage. We have a ground floor with 20,000 square feet, and what percentage would you say generally would work out to be up front?
18,000.
About 18,000.
That being said, are we going to put a
But now, whether it's a
department store
restaurant,
here, one building, one retail? Are we going to put 10 different commercial storefronts here?
well, if they were all retail storefronts, we could get away with, what we were talking about, one for every 150 square feet. That's what our current is. And even that's going to be too much. We're going to have to downgrade that.
What about a dentist office or a medical practice?
Yeah, medical practice, I mean, they have several employees that each have their own car, and then the people that come there.
I think the issue that we need to figure out is we need to have a mandatory minimum. And I think, as much as you don't want to hear it, it's going to require a large portion of the lot across the street.
Okay.
I mean, we're probably looking at another 60 spaces, I'm thinking, other than you're even proposing right now at 94. You
Okay.
figure, even if a single person moves in, you got one car, then you're going to have married couples. I would say, and the residents, you're probably, if we put 1.5 cars for the residents on the upper
That would be
floors,
tight, I think.
that would be tight, and then you're already at your 94 spaces. We're not even
Yeah,
addressing the
right.
commercial
And
involved.
that gives nothing to the commercial, so we have to decide how much, take a shot in the dark, and how much do we need for commercial?
Right. So, and if you look at like downtown Dearborn, I know we were talking familiar, on Michigan Avenue, there are giant parking lots behind a lot of those buildings.
There's city parking lots.
Yeah, which we don't have that much.
Right, so we're trying to work with what we do have.
Yeah, we have, well, you have that acre parcel on the other side of Pardo. I think that parcel will be adequate. I don't know how much of that parcel we need to eat up.
So why can't we, I'm sorry for interrupting, let's come up with a number and make the approval based on the parking spaces that you guys recommend, and then we'll work it into the Pardo. If we can develop Pardo, then we'll develop it. If we can't, then we'll use it as parking, but I don't see a need to, keep pushing it down the road.
So you'd be willing to restrict what you could develop
If you want to
on-
take all of Pardo, the
I'm just-
parking lot, I'm okay with that. I just want to move forward. That's it.
And that's not the goal.
Yeah.
I'm just saying, like, you would be willing to restrict what you could build on the John Hawk side of that property. Maybe it's only a 4-unit or a 6-unit condo complex.
Maybe there's, yeah.
To accommodate the rest of the parking for across the street.
100%, because this is the big project right here.
But we
You
can,
wouldn't have to restrict. Once it's earmarked as parking for this project, any future projects would take into consideration that it's previously earmarked for another project.
But it's going to restrict what he could possibly build.
yeah,
Exactly,
just
down
by
the
the
road.
number of parking spaces we have to put in.
One other aspect,
How many parking spots can you typically put on an acre?
I was about to
Yeah,
tell you.
that's
that-
what I was gonna ask.
Yeah, I was going to say. So typically, if you're looking at, if you went with 60 parking spaces, at a minimum, you need about 18,000 square foot. So that's a little,
That's about a half an acre.
yeah, 40%. Definitely, with regards to the parking component and what's part of the PUD, that can be part of the PUD plan development plan that we talked about that's on here. But one thing to keep in mind is that I do think, as the future happens, as hopefully more of these type of projects can come forward, these things can be amended, because, for example, if for some reason, well, the ultimate thing would be this gets developed, other property values get higher, more of these come in, Kmart site gets developed, and then you're talking about a value that maybe eventually we have a public parking on this side, and so then that site that they own could eventually be with other development. But that's what happens, it's a snowball effect that happens later. So yes, you could make sure that there are certain components of the parking that are associated with these uses currently. It can always be amended in the future, doing the calculations at that time. Once again, doing just like you're doing now, making sure that it functions the right way, make sure that it functions for the new people, and then taking a look at it again under the new conditions that are like 5 or 10 years from now.
So I guess my concern is I don't want him, your developer, to be restricted on what he can put in that building.
Exactly.
Once we rezone it. If he wants a sit-down restaurant, I want him to be able to have that and not be worried about parking. You understand what I'm saying? If you want a medical facility, I'd rather you just take care of the parking now, and then you can put whatever you want down there. I just don't want us to be restricted, and you come back to us asking for, something else, or because we don't have enough parking to put that in that space.
I like the thinking ahead.
How much, did you say, how many spaces could we put in a half an acre? Did you say?
Over 60, probably. In half an acre, you do more. Let's see.
Just if I can step in, when I laid this out, just to get an idea of what we would, if we didn't get any parking reduction, I got over 100.
Yeah.
Having an access off of both Pardo and John Hawk, and if
If you use that whole lot?
Yeah, if you use the whole thing, and that's with some open space, with, meeting the 15-foot landscape islands. If we reduce those, you could, get another spot, there. You could probably gain another 10 if we reduce some of those things, if you
Yeah.
don't want access both roads.
Really, I was kind of thinking that with your commercial property, if you're putting in restaurants and other businesses like that, you're going to need almost that whole 94 spots that are directly behind the building. And if you can add another 90 spots on the other side for your residential, personally, I think that would probably work.
To the chair.
Yes.
I don't understand, we're putting the cart before the horse here. Right now, I understand you don't have a floor plan, this is conceptual. And other than the addition of some more limestone on this building, I love the project. However, being as how it's conceptual, it's not up to us for me to look at this drawing and guesstimate how many retail spaces we're going to have, and how many one-bedroom, and how many
But it's impossible
two-bed.
to determine how many retail spaces, because every retailer that comes to lease is going to want a different square footage. So how can I tell you?
All
how
we
many
can do
retail
is
spaces?
say
We're going
what the
based
square
off
footage is.
Yeah, because that's how, Mike, that's how we've been doing some of the newer ones. Like, for example, the new commercial building up at Ford near Town and Country. That one did come in as just the square footage. It was developed to have as most up to 8 units. And then as they're leased, some of them take singles, some of them take doubles. So like right now, like the rug store that's in there, they took two units. And then that use takes different. But you're absolutely, so that's why typically now, based on the floor plan, 20,000, take out 20%, 18,000, trying to figure out that. And that's why normally I would do, on our normal commercial developments, do 250 square feet as a shopping center configuration. And then if they do put in a restaurant, then that's when I would, when they do the C of O and have the restaurant come in, I would look at the number of seats and accomplish
Sure, I
that.
understand that, but in order to get to this point, I have to believe that I would have an idea about how many storefronts I would want to put here, and I would have a conceptual idea, if not written on paper, about how many one-bedroom. There's market studies that dictate all of this. What's the average new retail spot? How much do new people coming into the market today usually expect to have? Whether that's 1, 2, or 3 storefronts, it's still a certain number of storefronts here. is it left up to me to go on this and go, let's see, that's one storefront, 2, 3, 4?
So regardless of the number of storefronts, it's the floor area they use is what we do.
Okay. And excusing that, I'm sure there's market studies and analysis that dictate to you what your ROI is going to be for studio, 1-bedroom, 2-bedroom, and with the demographics of this area, what you expect to build there. So I'd like to see some hard numbers, because we're talking
We
about how many
provided-
parking spaces we need for what I don't know we have.
Chairperson May, could I
Yes.
speak? So maybe a suggestion here would be to go with Mr. Ortega's, go with our ordinance. It's 157. I mean, we're not at a plan site review just yet. And so
Okay.
long as the applicant understands that our minimum expectation would be our ordinance, and we would expect them to use good judgment, given however your
Well-
plans develop.
Sure.
I think they've demonstrated a willingness to use that site across the road for parking.
Right, so I think it's hopefully helping guide you to say, when you come back, assuming we take this forward today, when you come back to the site plan, at minimum, we would expect it to meet our ordinance, and then as your plan develops, single unit or multi-unit, et cetera, you would use good judgment in how you bring it back to us.
I mean, 100%. Right now, I guess what we're looking for is the minimum requirement so that we can move forward. In
Yeah.
terms of storefronts, if that's what you're concerned about, we're talking square footage, kind of like what Mario was talking about, to see, to give us a minimum on the parking, but whether it's, 5 storefronts or 15 storefronts, I don't think that's going to matter. But, I mean, typically, your average storefront for what we're looking to implement is going to be between 2,000 and 2,500 square feet. So you probably end up with, probably about 10 storefronts. But someone might come in and say, hey, I need for, this restaurant, our restaurant has, 4,500 square feet. And a coffee shop, like what they have in Dearborn, typically has the same thing. So it's going to depend on the tenants that are attracted to the area for us to be able to, split the, shells for them to, operate out of. But based on square footage, I mean, Kelly stated and reiterated that we're willing to use the other parking, the other lot to accommodate for the parking. If we can do, what he's proposing, 157,
Actually, I don't think that 157 is a good number, because that is only for residential. That's only for our current requirements for the apartments. That doesn't even include any for commercial.
Even if we reduced it to 2 for the apartments, that'd be 120.
I think we could go down to 1.5 for the apartments, but I think what we need 90 spaces for the apartments, and we need another 100 spaces for commercial.
100 spaces for commercial.
What's our requirement right now for that square footage for commercial? And is the use different based on what it is? Is it,
Yeah.
if it's a doctor's office, is it different?
It's
Is it a-
72 for the
Absolutely.
commercial.
So based on our current standards, and one aspect about this in terms of the tenants themselves and what they are, I think that's one of the reasons in the ordinance we have what's called the shopping center standard, because
That allows for a certain variety.
exactly. Allows for a certain variety of carry-out type restaurant versus professional office, like a real estate office versus a hair salon, that shopping center mixed use, because then also tends to factor in hours of operation, because a real estate office will close at 5 o'clock, even though we might need them after 5. But anyway, so yeah, that standard is 250. So that's 72 parking spaces based on
For the commercial.
for the commercial.
For the commercial.
So we're 162.
Yeah,
And I'm,
So we're about 50 short,
right,
which is less than a fourth of an acre.
right.
Which is, we
and I'm
propose
good
to
with the
use.
1.5 for residential, because the 2.2 sounds high.
Well,
And honestly, 1.85 is kind of the standard. limit.
in this particular
Most studios,
circumstance.
there's only going to be one person living in there.
Yeah, in a studio, I would imagine. In
Well,
your
yeah.
4,500 square foot restaurant right now, how many spaces are you required to have there? Ballpark it, you don't have to be right
It
now.
depends on the number of seats.
Yeah.
It doesn't go by square footage for a
4,500
restaurant.
feet, I gotta believe his kitchen area is probably 1,500 square feet.
Yeah.
So he's probably got about 3,500 square feet of seating area, or 2,500 square feet of
It's a
seating.
little bit different because there's a pocket park that we also utilize.
Because of where you're located down there?
Yeah. But I'll tell you, in Westland, we just opened up a Brougham on Ford Road and between Newburgh and Wayne, I believe.
That was
in front
actually
of
the one I was
Kroger.
talking about, was down there.
Yeah, so, I can't remember how many there are, but there's not a lot. There's maybe, can I verify it?
If I'm guessing around 20 to
I
25.
think that it's definitely under 30. I was assuming it's 25.
So my whole thing with the parking is the only way we could do this right now is on square footage. We couldn't do it on the use of the building. It's physically impossible. And not just the use of the building to begin with, but the use of the building in 10 years. You're going to have
Right.
different tenants come in and out, which could change your parking standard
Which is why it makes sense to use the shopping center standard,
Yeah,
yeah,
for the commercial.
for the commercial part.
Correct.
I
Yeah.
like that.
So there's 72.
72.
72 spaces for the shopping center standard,
And if we reduce
And at
it,
1.5, that's 90 for the residential.
and,
so 160.
and 90 for the,
Yeah.
so we need 90 for the residential, 72 for the commercial.
Yep.
Okay. So we're going to have to use at least a portion of the lot across Pardo
Okay.
to total that number.
But hopefully that'll leave you enough room to develop something.
What does half your lot give us additional parking? What is,
A half a lot?
Half an acre?
Half a lot would be
50?
about 60. I mean, if there's no green space involved in the parking lot, I mean, the minimal green space, just like when you're looking at the picture, just like around the perimeters, I mean, you don't need a park or anything like that, but when you're doing that, I mean,
If-
I'm assuming you can at least fit 60 in a half an acre.
If we included that lot across Pardo in the boundaries of the PD, could we squeeze in more lots per the area?
Excuse me, you mean more lots?
If we
meaning-
included that as planned development, could we squeeze in more parking spaces?
Actually, you wouldn't need to. What you could do is, the applicant, since he's the owner, he could develop that as parking possibly, and then you just give himself a parking sharing agreement to allow that to happen, and that could be a standard of approval. Let me check and make sure that he's allowed to build that as parking on its own.
That's zone CBD.
Yeah, it's CBD. So I'm
And
not
there's all kinds of
sure.
provisions for parking in CBD.
There are.
But we need to end up with 162 spots. We have 94 on the north side of Pardo, and the rest of them would be on the south side.
And just to be upfront, even, I'm okay with the 1.5 for the residential. I think you guys are being good with that, very generous, but realistically, on the suites, one car, and the majority of them are going to be suites. We're looking at 750 square foot a unit. They're going to be suites.
They can have visitors though, right?
But until we actually do the architectural design, we won't know. So, I mean, I'm okay with the 1.5, but it will be less. But
Yeah.
that's fine, it gives us more.
But there will be some, even one-bedrooms, that have two people with two cars. And so that half a space is making up for that.
I suspect there'll be a lot of girlfriends and boyfriends and two cars, even in
Yeah.
studios and one-bedrooms.
I think in the end, if everything's prospering, you fill up your commercial spaces and everything, parking's going to be still pretty tight. But
We're not going to develop this until we know what's going on with that. You understand what I'm saying? So like I said, if we need to use the entire area, we're okay with it.
Well, that would be fine with us if you want to use the entire area.
That would, I think,
I'm just saying that we need 70 spots over there.
Yep.
And what do we do in the approval process to guarantee that?
can
So it's, I
fund a supplemental parking lot.
think we'd have to include it in the PD district. I think we're going to have to, because parking lots themselves can't exist independently in the CBD district.
They have to be attached to a building.
Yeah. So we'd have to,
And I
You
think
have to-
that's how we proposed it, though, isn't it?
when we were doing the different aspect of the site, yeah. Yeah, one other ways that this could move forward with making sure that the parking gets improved is the requirement that it be constructed in the future, or we can amend the PUD to allow it, or we can, the issue is we'd have to, it's the rezoning aspect. The rezoning is as advertised as these lots on the north side. So we'd have to include the south side lot in the rezoning to PD.
That has to be part of the plan.
Yeah,
Part of the PD, okay.
Yeah. And
yeah.
can
Because the only other thing.
we add that on tonight, or?
Do you see it as problematic down the road?
Down the road, no. Moving forward to trying to get in front of council, it would take restarting the project, because it has to be rezoned as PD, as planned development, planned unit development, so that then this site would, the parking, if you tie it to this, would have, in order for him to develop that lot solely as a parking, it'd have to have some, it'd have to be the right zoning district.
Isn't there a way to combine that lot, even though it's not attached?
Even if it did, it's the fact that the rezoning is proposing the PD boundaries around these lots on the north side of Pardo. The PD boundary has to go to the south side of Pardo, so then the site has to get,
Does it have to be zoned the same to be connected to that building?
it could.
We have other
it could get rezoned to-
businesses that are zoned one thing, and they have a vehicular parking zoned lot
Right.
behind them.
Exactly, yeah, that's what I was going to say, but then, but that does involve a rezoning. So it'd be rezone it to PD, or excuse me, you rezone it to vehicular parking.
Yeah.
So it'd be a separate step, that's true, it could be a separate step that's done, separate from this. And could be a condition of approval of the PD to create a VP zoned.
You have to do.
Yeah,
I think that,
that's probably the best way, yep.
If
To move
both-
forward, it could be a condition of approval that the site on the south side be rezoned to vehicular parking, and the applicant developed 60-plus parking spaces.
So if you-
And that might have a better aspect to this, though.
through the chair.
What do you got, Matt?
I just think that maybe instead of saying vehicular parking, it would be probably rezoned to P, planned development also, because if you rezone it to vehicular parking,
Then
that's
it's
the only thing
restricted
that
only
occur
there. Yeah, right.
there.
And he can't develop.
You know, part of the master plan, or part of the goal of the planned development district is that we want flexibility, and I think I don't think we should reuse all of this. I think we should leave him some flexibility, because I feel there is marketability of the John Hawk site. You know, I think that should be done, and so I think the planned development for parking, but then to amend the planned development later, you come back to us and say, I want to amend, I want to put in 6 condos there or something. You know, I think that would be the way to do it. It would
Okay,
be-
yeah, because we don't,
This gives
I
you
don't
the
think we need to
best
make the whole lot
opportunity.
a parking lot. We only need 72 spots.
You know, the condition would be for the rezoning of the Phase 2 lot to planned development. You know, the condition that would be planned development to accommodate, 72 vehicles, or the number that we come up with.
Yeah.
You know, I think would be the best
7
way.
is
Okay.
the bare minimum, yeah.
And we want to, part of it is the flexibility, and also what the developer builds, they have to be able to market, and we understand that too.
Sure.
Right, so.
Yeah.
And I think we need to be a little flexible too, because we've been wanting this for a long time.
Oh, absolutely. I think this is a great development. I'm really pleased with the whole thing. We just need to make it workable, and it's got to have parking to be workable, I think.
Like you say, for your ROI, you don't want, you want people that go there and enjoy it and don't have a hassle every day parking, and people that are going to the individual stores and/or restaurants and can find parking conveniently and not be aggravated.
People aren't going to want to walk across Ford Road to park.
No.
It'd be a lot easier if you could just purchase the
suggest that.
Allstate building in that parking
But
lot.
Part O
That
is
solves
a
a lot
whole
of your
different
problems.
thing.
Yeah.
And one other
Okay, so we
aspect-
make this a condition
Yes.
that,
good.
of
Phase
this
two-
approval
The Phase 2 PUD includes the construction of parking spaces on the
to be
parcel
included
itself.
as a planned development.
Plan development.
What number do we want to affix to that, 67 or 70?
Well, we've got 60, or we got 94 on the north side. We need 70, we need 70 on the south side. And that will give us an adequate number, I think.
Yep. One other aspect too, when we eventually get to this PUD for this Phase 2, as a feasibility for it, just for the applicant in terms of site design, how he designs a parking lot could also include land banking. So like, depending on the number of parking spaces he needs, they could be, some of them could be designed, and then some of them could be planned to be parking spaces, but not net constructed. I mean, it all depends on the phasing of the project. And the only reason I bring that up is because while we hope this gets constructed as quickly as possible, I'm sure just like the applicant does, there's going to be other aspects of the financing and of other aspects of the project that is going to be needed that might take some time for the site to get fully utilized. So, and it's not any, and I just mentioned that as something to consider later on in Phase 2, but you're absolutely right, yes. A condition of approval could be that Phase 2 of the PUD, Phase 2 of the project include a PUD rezoning from the southern property for a minimum of 70 parking spaces.
Okay.
You could do some townhomes along here.
What is it?
You could do some townhomes.
That's what I
facing
wanted
this.
to do.
You could, and then parking, you could have garages on first floor if you wanted to take a look at your need for
Jefferson.
Okay, yes.
Do we want to talk to the applicant at all about the appearance of the building and any kind of specifics? And I realize we're not looking at a site plan today, but presumably, if we go forward tonight, we would see a site plan.
Yeah, we have some recommendations
I'm
on
just kind
the,
of wondering if we should
Yeah.
share those with the applicant that way.
sure, we can talk about that.
That's on page 4 at the bottom of the letter.
And it could be something as simple as bullet pointing items that you see in the rendering that you want to make sure are included in the final building, and then also any supplemental suggestions like I had or you had. Yes, sir, sorry.
My only suggestion is when you bring us a site plan, don't have it a proposed site plan. Bring us one that
No.
you're physically going to build and not deviate from.
Yep.
So that
Yeah,
would be
when-
my request.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, going through your comments, we're talking about, do you have a copy of this letter, by the way?
Yes.
On page 4, down at the bottom, detailed design requirements. We have the use of light-colored stone on the ground floor as proposed in your rendering.
Can we,
We have with the clock over the door on the corner. The vertical columns to create articulation. And then we go into more detailed bottom. We're recommending stone window lintels, brick soldier courses for window enhancement. sills and aprons, a stone-style cornice roof line. What were you going to build the cornice with? I see some cornices that seem to be built out of plaster.
Ephes,
We're not going to, are you planning on using stone to build the cornice on the building?
Is he referring to this right here?
The roof
top,
line,
it's the
roof line
top.
Oh,
corner.
the top.
are you looking at stone or Ephes?
Whatever you guys want.
We prefer stone.
Okay.
On the bottom, for the light colored bricks, I don't know if limestone is still used commercially as a viable building product.
Yeah.
But I'd like to see limestone on the bottom that would totally, it would mimic that original look of that corner. 'Cause
Yeah.
it's been limestone for 90-plus years, rather than white brick or
Is-
beige brick or
is that a,
brick something or other.
Is that feasible, using limestone for the first floor?
I'm not an architect, so I won't pretend to answer that.
I would just be curious about the longevity of the limestone. Generally, limestone's a softer material.
Yeah.
Been there 90-some years.
It's been on the stone, it needs to be cleaned occasionally.
Limestone of 90 years ago is different now, just like concrete of 30 years ago is different now. So I know, I'm not saying we can't do limestone, but it won't be able to be like a facade. It'll actually have to be a full limestone piece.
What would you recommend to replace it with?
Often is like a poured, like a panel type
Yeah.
construction. Maybe Commissioner King could maybe share that down the way. I think
This
that's
was,
what that is there.
we took a shot of the building at Main Street Ann Arbor Trail in Plymouth, if you're familiar. It's a similar type of residential on top with the commercial use on the bottom.
Looks like this building.
One thing we want to consider with that aspect is I believe limestone is going to be really, really pricey as well compared to other things. And I'm not saying that we can't do it. I'm just saying that it also has to pencil in for us properly, and we're ready.
Yeah, I understand that. We
Yeah.
would
But we
like
wanna
something to mimic that look, though,
Yeah.
and something that's going to be
Take a look at
durable. Yeah, you can see that.
Maybe something like a
Downtown
durable
Plymouth
masonry
at the end of
product
Main
that
Street.
I
mimics.
believe those are like a limestone color, like block almost.
That's what it is.
Yeah.
That's exactly what it is, and that's really what I had envisioned. But
And like limestone isn't, I think, a building material we use commonly anymore.
No, it is more of a,
It's a trim feature now.
it's a veneer.
Yes.
And honestly, the durability of it depends on the thickness of the veneer.
Yeah.
But sometimes veneers are considered like, people think of it as a negative statement, but basically it's mainly because none of the masonry products we use anymore aren't actual structural. You're not load bearing. They're all steel underneath, or even wood. And wood sometimes is steel on the first floor, wood a 4-to-1 or a 5-to-1. So, but I think something like you guys are saying, actually, just to be detailed, is a masonry product that has a durability and appearance of masonry, or like product that has a durability or similar appearance of limestone.
So what did you say the Plymouth one was?
Block?
that looks like block. It looks like,
Oh, yeah, it
blocks.
does.
Full depth block,
Yeah,
not a veneer?
And integrally,
I don't
I would say
believe it's a
integrally
veneer.
colored, too, integrally colored, because what happens is then they mix the color in during the production of the mason instead of a color on top.
I don't know what you guys think. I think that would look good.
Yeah, I agree.
If
Yeah, masonry
that's what you
block
had in mind, I think that would work.
yeah.
What out of these items that were listed in this paragraph do we think is important? Do we want to make sure that we include? I think the stone,
We have the reverse
the
gable
stone
details.
sills, the stone sills under the windows, I think, makes it look dressy. I would like to see that.
What
Do the,
exactly are you, under the windows right
The
here?
window
The
layers.
sills, the sill and the
to see on
lintels.
here.
Yeah, but he wants the soldier bricks there, right?
Well, either one, I was sorry, I was throwing a mix of different things that you might come up with, but like, they could just a stone sill and a stone.
Instead of the brick, it would just be
Yeah.
A
a
stone
different
sill.
material here, yeah, kind of.
Could it be the same matching as the bottom?
That would be the
Yeah.
That up there could be
Yeah,
a standard
yeah.
limestone sill. I
Yeah.
think
Similar to
as
that.
far as you're gonna be away from it, yeah.
Yeah,
Those are limestone sills.
yeah. That building that we showed you has those sills.
Kind of the same there too, that's kind of limestone.
The recessed patio areas, are those, is that an accurate representation?
That is what it would look like, because the ordinance dictates it can't extend beyond the face of the building, so.
Sure.
And I believe, people want balconies, so.
Would that exist on the south and east faces of the building?
If that is south and east, that's.
In the parking lot.
Yeah,
The back.
There's not as much of a view necessarily, but if that's what would be required, I think that's.
What are we talking
So-
about on the other
so
side of the building?
So these are
That's one
balconies.
aspect we would probably
So if they
recommend
want
too, is like the,
courtyard,
all four facades, all the same materials.
Yeah.
Inside.
Because that parking lot, that
That's
south
gonna
and
be-
rear is just as visible.
Yeah, coming down Middle Belt, that's what you're going to see.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's an important thing too, that all four sides of the building have to be finished the same way, not just the front,
Material-wise or?
material-wise and style-wise. Yeah.
So you're looking at balconies on the back side?
Balconies on the, sure.
Okay. Well,
And the only other thing I had, other than the red brick for the upper floors, was the vertical columns. I like the looks of that. It breaks up the front of the building,
yeah.
and I want to make sure we get the vertical columns, and it's recommending here a minimum of 8 inches sticking out from the wall.
I guess I want to clear up the roof area. If, that's not mandatory, but if we can do something, we'll go ahead and do it. But I'm assuming if we did something on the roof, that there's also going to have to be something.
The
so people-
parapet would be different.
Oh, you mean safety thing?
Yeah.
Yeah, it
You
would.
definitely have to have something like that. And then,
The cornice, you mean, on the roof?
Well, your corner,
they're talking about
parapet
the
would just
use.
have to be higher to
Yeah.
take care of
So
that.
this would still be here, this would be, it would be set
Just
in.
For rooftop access.
okay.
What would be the minimum height on that parapet to be safe?
36 inches.
That's
probably.
38
36 to
inches?
42 inches?
Yeah.
Like 42
42?
inches?
Yep.
Okay.
40-inch parapet.
Yeah, but I mean, I don't, if you guys.
To have the balconies all the way around the building and have that rooftop available, I might move in, you know?
We're not making the rooftop a requirement though, right? Just a possibility if he can do it?
Well,
Is
possibilities
that
don't seem
what we
to
want?
happen.
We've got,
So-
yeah.
That's, you don't, so, here, let me share with you something. You're not familiar with a lot of the things that we do, but, let me see. So, when we do restaurants right now, but we're venturing off into some other things, but when we do something, we do it right. We're not here to cut corners. We're not your typical person that's going to come get approval and then do something completely different. We don't do that. My brother served on the chair of the DDA for West Dearborn. Our concepts are, and a lot of people would vouch for it, is what stimulated the growth in West Dearborn. When we first developed our first concept, Yogurtopia in West Dearborn, there was nothing like it over there. The lines were out the door for, as long as we were open over there. And then we developed the Brome Modern Eatery. Brome Modern Eatery became a staple of the community over 10 years ago. And that triggered what other people developed, because there was about a 35 to 40% occupancy rate in Dearborn. And then when people seen what we do, it raised the standard for everyone else. And then the city progressed and everything is leased out now. And then we developed the Great Commoner. This was a space that was not an iconic building, but a historical building, and it was proposed to be torn down, and we were against it. And it cost us a lot more money to keep that building and repurpose it for a restaurant versus, I believe it was a wedding store, dress store previously. In downtown Detroit, we built a Bro Modern Eatery over there, and it was voted top 5 scenic restaurants in Detroit because everything we did over there. And I can always provide you guys with pictures so you can see what it is that we actually do. But we don't cut corners. You go to Westland Bro Modern Eatery for a space like that, that was in Old Boston Market. It's been a hit over there from the get-go, and we haven't even had our grand opening. It's expected to do more numbers than what we do in Dearborn, and Dearborn is very, very solid. In Dearborn, we were actually the number one in purchasing for, ground beef out of any restaurant in almost all of Metro Detroit. So when we do things, we do it right. We inserted the pocket park that was underutilized by the city and had worked out an agreement with them to lease it out, and we made that pocket park beautiful, and right now we're renovating it. And every one of our restaurants that we do, we're constantly renovating every 5 years to give it a new, refreshed look, because we believe that, you keep things fresh, you keep things clean, and you're constantly making people want to come back because they're sick of coming to the same place. So if you want to continue to see these profit margins, it's okay to reinvest a few $100,000 each time to make that happen. So yeah, what you said, what's proposed is not always done. You're right, but with myself and my brothers, we do things right. At least we like to think that we do, and we've gotten a lot of recognition for it. Our restaurants were voted best restaurant in America, best burger joint in America by 3 different magazines. Right now, we're currently franchising, and we have over 100 applicants, and we stopped taking applications because we want to grow organically. So I promise you, what we do is going to be an asset to the city, and it's going to stimulate the growth to the city. We're not a, one-shot wonder where we just want to make our quick buck and leave. This project over here is not making a quick buck because it's such a high expense for us that the ROI is nowhere near what we had anticipated. But we believe in, the growth of Garden City, and that's why we've stuck with it and are trying to, come to a, final resting area here so that we can kind of, you'll see. I mean, Garden City is already having a lot of people come here and look at your buildings and talk about redevelopment, but I promise you, nobody does it like what we do. I'm not saying there's not better developers, but there's not a lot of people that are willing to put in the sweat equity and the financial equity that's needed and sacrifice, some of the ROI on that as we are. Everyone else is looking for just the bottom line. We're looking to make a statement and be a part of history in every city that we go into.
I'm very encouraged by all that, and I look forward to all of it. And what I'm hoping that can happen here is that this building in Garden City is everything you say it's going to be, and it's going to bring a wow factor to that corner, because we can use that to springboard other developments
100%.
that we're looking at in our rest of our city as well. So I look forward to all that, and I just think that having the balconies on all 4 sides of this building, to have that rooftop with your additional parking, I think it's going to bring that wow factor that you want and we want. And I think that's going to be a good thing for everybody. So when I say it doesn't always happen, if it's not on paper, I don't see it as happening. I've been sitting here for 30 years, and it's been my experience that if we don't talk about it today and put it down in our notes and say we're going to do it, then more than likely it won't happen. And I think that would be part of the wow factor of your building, because there's nothing, I can't think of a single rooftop unit in this immediate area. And so that would further enhance your building and give it even more of a wow factor than I think it's already has.
Yeah, so we want to do the rooftop.
Great.
I'm not going to promise you that we are, because at the end of the day, we're going to look at, you know, the costs and everything, but if it's something that can be implemented, believe me, we're the first people that are going to do it. So let's just say we're planning on it, but I don't want it to be a condition, and I will come to you before we even develop and say, hey, I can do it or I can't do it. I'll be upfront with you guys and transparent as possible. You would know more than anyone the cost of it. I don't know, because I'm not really into the development side. But if you tell me you can do it, we'll do it. I mean, if you tell me financially it's not going to break the bank, then yeah, I don't know about the support structures under the roof and what has to be done and what has to be surfaced and all that. I don't know. I've never done a rooftop. I'll just be upfront with you about that. But if you tell me that it's, you know, economically that it can be done and keep us, you know, above water, then yeah, we'll do it.
One key aspect of that will be, at least the discussion is happening now, so they could factor it in to their considerations when they do
Yeah.
the final site plan.
Yeah.
And then the size and scale of it, though, I think can be done appropriately. So as you noted,
Yeah,
Mike,
when we get
we
more
don't have
details with
any-
the site plan, we'll be able
Right.
to.
We'll wait to see, and
that.
it might be,
Is it
modest, but that's fine, because, you know.
Yeah, it
would
doesn't have to be the whole
Now-
roof.
No.
Now, the rooftop, let me ask you this, does the rooftop, is that just for residential, or can commercial use it as well for?
Well, I was thinking just residential.
I was thinking just residential.
It would be really nice if
I
it
was
was
thinking
commercial.
more, commercial, you'd have a bigger benefit and you'd be able to.
That's what I'm
make
saying.
money
It'd be really
out of it
nice.
If it had a commercial use to it.
That's what I was thinking.
That's an option that I hadn't considered, but I wouldn't.
Commercially for it, then it might make more sense.
No,
Be against it.
no, not at all.
For a restaurant in the summer and the roof.
Yep.
Yeah, that would,
Catch me up there.
Oh, yeah.
that would be very interesting.
So that's probably why it's best to allow it, cite it as a potential feature.
Yeah.
And then during final site plan, they can
Yeah.
determine the actual size and use of it.
Yeah.
But yeah, we'd all
Okay.
vote for outdoor seating up top.
But then we'll
Well,
put that in there as a definite maybe, and after you crunch your numbers, you can see
We'll
if
talk
you
to the
can.
architects and the developers, and we'll see what we can do. And, you know, I mean, I think it's a great idea if we can benefit from it commercially. The tenants would be more into
Sure.
leasing over there.
Yeah, very possible. Well, unless you have anything else you want to add, we need to follow through and actually open our public hearing, and that won't take very long. And then we can finish our discussion and make whatever motion we need to make. So if you don't have anything else, have a seat, and we'll
Thank you.
get on with the meeting. Okay, I would like to open the public hearing at 8:15. Anyone have any comments or questions, wishes to come to the podium, identify themselves? Please do so now. Seeing no one, we'll ask the clerk if we have any written communications.
We did not receive any written communications.
Okay. Then at 8:16, I'll close the public hearing, and we'll go on with the commission's discussion and recommendations. I think we have an excellent project going here. I would certainly like to see it go forward, and with the addition of the other contingencies, I think, unless somebody has some comments to make,
Can I just review the conditions as we discussed?
Yeah.
Just so we can maybe frame up a motion?
Sure.
So I think we said a letter from the fire marshal confirming the ability to handle this property, this building. Number 2, a follow-up planned development plan for the applicant's lot south of Pardo and north of John Hawk to include 70 parking spaces for a total of 162 on both properties. And I think the third item, which really attaches back to the future site plan, which is Mr. Ortega's recommendations A through D, and then enhancements to the concept drawing, including the items captured in the Mr. Ortega's letter. I think it's D1. In addition to masonry materials with limestone or limestone appearance, and all aesthetics and materials on all sides of the building. Look at this.
Okay, and you've included the recommendations A through D?
Yes, yep, so that would be, I think, and Mr. Ortega, maybe you can correct me if I'm wrong, but all of your recommendations are regarding the site plan, the future site plan, not in the recommendation on the planned development plan.
Well,
Correct, except for the
Except for-
architectural detail list that you guys went over.
and obtaining final site plan approval is contingent on approving the PD, the plan development.
Yeah, it has to go to council, and
Yeah,
we'll
yeah,
do the
yeah.
parking
Yeah, so
as a
it's really a
part of the
recommendation.
PUD.
Yep, yep, yep.
Okay, do you want to make a motion with those contingencies for recommendation to the council?
I'm happy to make the motion. Have you repeat it for the record? Or do you
Have you written it down? Okay, mostly, okay. I've got it down too, and I think between the two of us, I'll.
Okay, then if you can get it straight, that's fine.
To the meeting minutes, I will be able to.
Is there support?
Support.
Any comments or questions on the motion?
You know, I guess maybe a comment on my own motion is, given we have had over an hour of conversation, how do we translate this for city council so it doesn't become a 2-minute decision based upon?
That we have a tremendous opportunity to redevelop one of the most major areas in our city.
Yes, this could be one of the most major developments in our city in many, many years.
I just wonder if one or more of us should, I don't know if that's been done before, should accompany Mr. Ortega.
Yes, you're always more than welcome to attend.
Would you care to do that?
I mean, I would be willing to do it just to give, again, the context around a lot of dialogue on a complex idea.
Yep.
Yes, I think that,
Not let it be dismissed, thank you.
I'd be willing to go too.
Okay.
I think that
Well,
would be
you would
fine.
highlight all the benefits about the additional new residents to the city,
Ensure them that we address the parking issue.
about bringing people into our DDA corridor, which goes to make our city more walkable, and
Mr. Miller, could you just let us know what city council agenda this will be on, once you know,
Correct.
if the motion passes?
So the plan, if the motion passes, is, I don't have my calendar before us, I think on the 19th of May,
Yep.
at the council meeting, we will request that they call a public hearing. And because this is the only ordinance, one of the only ordinance, there's a couple others, where, remember, we kind of removed double public hearings through a lot of the ordinance, but we did not do so for Planned Development District. So they will have to have their own public hearing call.
Well, it was
and
optional.
notify.
It was optional to have a joint public hearing for this.
Yes, yes. So they're going to have their
They
own.
didn't choose to do this.
Correct, they did not. So we will, at the 20, so my plan is, if it's approved, is that the 19th will call the hearing for the 23rd of June. And then after that, it would then be effective after that there. And part of their public hearing is, of course, if Commissioner King and Williams are present also, your recommendation, of course, is weighed heavily on their decision too. So.
I just have
Yes.
one question before we vote. With this going to a four-story building, there's no maximum height yet. Do we have anything in mind? Like, if we're going to approve the four-story, we should kind of have a height.
Do you know what the height of the building's going to be?
Based off of our old ordinance, it's about 14 feet per story, so it'd be about 54 feet.
The only thing is that you kind of typically want that first floor to be a little bit taller to have all your utilities
Yeah.
and everything. You want to go like 16 or 18.
So I
So
don't
then maybe
More
there's a
than
little,
60 or something?
I was thinking 60, 65, like.
oh,
something.
16 you had in mind, okay.
Pardon?
Would you be comfortable approving with 60 feet and we could make it work?
Shall not
Well,
exceed
we want
60
room
feet.
for the parapet, too.
Yeah,
We would measure, I think the height goes to the roof floor. I don't.
The roof
I think
deck?
it's the roof deck. is
The roof deck, yeah, not, it's not the
don't think the
parapet.
parapet's-
Parapet wall is a permitted extent, like, for example, there'll be an elevator and there'll be stairwells, and those will be permitted extensions above the roof deck.
What's the maximum you guys would approve?
Well, that will,
Well, we had a study.
that will come at the site plan.
Yep.
I'm thinking like
Maybe, I mean, we could do a
65
60
feet gives
or
them 16 and a half feet per floor.
I mean, a cap is not a bad thing either. Of course, it has to be amended, we have to return, but.
Right.
I
We want to
don't
keep
know,
in mind.
I think we should wait till the site plan comes in so we can see what everything looks like.
That's true.
I like that
You have four
because
stories, you don't need to
It could
necessarily do it
affect
now.
What happens over at on
Yeah.
the former Kmart site, too.
Yeah,
I just
right.
don't want them
And I
to
don't wanna
go and
restrict
design
us to
something and
four
come back to
because
us
five
and
is-
us not be okay with a 70
People are-
foot tall
Yeah.
building. You know what I'm saying? So that's why I was just trying to.
Yeah,
do
we want a
general
four-story
kind of
building,
idea.
not a six-story building.
Yeah, just trying to get like a general idea of what we're looking at.
Yeah,
We have support for this height addition, too, that happened many years ago. What was it, Plant Moran? The Ann Arbor study that talked about in your CBD, your tallest buildings, and it,
yeah,
That's true.
Yeah, I think it was Beckett and Rader, but yeah.
Yep.
yeah, that's part of the CBD ordinance.
right,
Yeah, that the taller buildings be at the center of the,
and then fan out.
then gradually go down from there.
If that's the case, then we got to make this one taller than a 13-story tower over there.
Well, maybe not.
We'll have to work on that. Is there any other questions?
No.
Would the secretary take the roll, please?
It was a motion moved by Commissioner King, and it was supported by Commissioner Steenberg. The first to vote is Commissioner King.
Aye.
Commissioner Steenberg.
Aye.
Commissioner Williams.
Aye.
Chairperson May.
Aye.
The motion does carry, Chairman.
Okay, the motion's carried to recommend approval by the city council. It goes to them next, and it's in their bag to do with what they wish. You have our support. And we'll see you next with your site plan.
Correct. The kind of the procedures, just so you know, Albert and Dan, right, Daniel, okay, make sure, is that, kind of following the approval of the plan development plan, rezoning to plan development, the applicant shall submit a final site plan review by the planning commission in accordance with normal site plan review procedures, is from the ordinance. So after the council does it, then, we'll see you back. Yes. Yes. Okay.
You guys intend to be at the council meeting?
Well, they will be required to be for the 23rd, yes.
If I were in your shoes, I would have a nice big drawing of this to show the council.
Put it on an easel up in front of them.
What I'm projecting, I don't know, hopefully they will.
We'll communicate you with it, yeah.
communicate with you, because we have to do a notice also.
I'd emphasize about the new people that you're bringing into the city potentially and the premier retail space right in the epicenter of our downtown.
Aye.
Good luck. Oh, if you have an opportunity to speak, which you will, I think I would emphasize the fact you're bringing potentially 60-plus new people into the city, and that you're bringing a premier retail space right in the heart of our DDA. Not to mention a gorgeous building with a lot of different opportunities available, and green space that doesn't exist there now. I think I would highlight all of that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And good luck.
I think Mario go. I'll just walk them.
Thank you. Good luck.
Thank you.
Good luck.
Good luck.
Yeah.
Thank you. You too. That doesn't happen too often.
Well, hopefully more often.
Yeah.
He was there when we did the
You got
charrette.
a promise.
I talked to him briefly towards the end. He's got a lot of projects going
Yeah.
in a bunch of different cities.
Well, I guess we have to wait till,
We have a fabulous opportunity here to redevelop that corner in a very beautiful way. And
that
by the way,
could spark a lot of other development too, I think.
this will definitely spark what's happening at Kmart site.
I certainly hope so.
You know,
It'll spark that.
and we don't want to, we don't want to restrict ourselves to 4 stories, because if you can envision, we got what, 6.5 or 7.5?
If you include the city acreage and everything else, 7 acres.
Okay.
It's
I could
big.
envision a 5-story building there with retail in the foreground and residential in the background.
Well, you think about how many people drive down Ford Road and
Oh.
drive through our city, and it's unremarkable.
Yes,
It's remarkable.
except at Christmas,
You know,
except at Christmas time.
Just,
Right, that's right, yeah.
yeah, that's the only time people notice.
Right now, we're just a pass.
I don't mean that in a disparaging way, I just mean people drive through the city, just drive.
Yeah,
through the city.
They wouldn't know when they get into Garden City versus, unfortunately, well, other than we have our entrance at Inkster, but beyond that, unless you're paying attention to around you, you might not know you've gone from one community to another.
Right.
Until you come to a downtown.
But this will make a difference, no doubt.
Yeah.
This
Okay,
is
do you
very
wanna-
similar to
do you wanna-
Plymouth there.
Yeah. You want to go ahead before Matt comes back and with the discussion of the housing readiness grant?
Yes, so just to let you know, we're continuing development of, we've concluded our, generally speaking, our analysis of the existing zoning standards and other policies we'd like to address in the master plan. So we'll be having, we developed goals and objectives for the ways to modify the housing policies based on public input. And then we'll be looking at some other aspects to include such as detailing residential design standards, also detailing different housing types that could possibly be developed, and then also looking at where they could be developed. So with that in mind, that's why before you, I handed out just recently, and this will be more of an exercise that, you know, I don't know about if we want to get into a lot of the details tonight, or it's something that you might benefit from visiting these sites and then coming back with input next time. At our next meeting. But basically, as we've just been, your cursory discussion you just had now, you started talking about different sites in the city, what we'd like to see as a potential, and what would be appropriate in those locations. So before you is just a very simple outline of some of the existing information on different types of sites, because the city, we are built out, but that doesn't mean there aren't opportunities for site development. So, and Fred, I don't know if it was underneath there you go. So basically, what's in front of you is just something to provide some basic information to begin the process of looking at different types of sites and seeing what could be appropriate. So the first type of site is something that might be used by another existing entity or was used by something in the past that's kind of larger. that could be done for redevelopment for different types of housing. So, for example, this is right at Cambridge and Hartel, and this is, I think it's still used by the hospital, right?
Yes.
It's still used by the hospital. However, as you've seen, if you've driven by the hospital, they are doing a lot of different things to redevelop that property. So the potential exists for this, or possibly other sites that might be owned by the school district. For example, the Burger, right?
Burchard Element.
Burchard, yeah, that one, or the old Maplewood Center, that's no longer developed. These are larger lots within a predominantly single-family residential neighborhood, but might lend themselves to something alternative than single-family. Maybe some of them are better as single-family, but in terms of this, it's 7 point, this itself, we just talked about the Kmart site. This site on its own is 7 acres. So what potentially could be done? When you consider this on the future land use map, for some reason it's called out as PD, as a public utility, public, semi-public, that's the purple, on the future land use map, versus surrounded by single family, and then you have the commercial corridor along Middlebelt, of course. In the zoning map, the entire site, along with all the other property owned by the school district, and then even some of the single-family homes along Cambridge are actually zoned currently as public, as PD, for some reason. No, forgive me. Those are flipped. The zoning map and the future land use map are flipped right there. I'm sorry about that. The labeling of that is wrong. So the map on your right-hand side is the future land use. So the map on the right-hand side shows the entire site and everything on Cambridge as planned unit, or public, semi-public. The map on your left is your zoning map currently. And normally, whenever you go over these kind of exercises, some, planners will be asking you, what density what do you envision for this site? And honestly, that sometimes can be very hard for any person, even the planners, to consider in terms of dwelling units per acre. That we can get to that number, but sometimes I feel like when you're looking at these sites and what could possibly be there, you want to look at characteristics that you could see make it compatible with what's already existing. So most importantly, the single-family homes in the area. So think about the type of front yard any kind of building that's on these sites could possibly be. Should they mimic exactly a single-family 30-foot front setback? Is it something where you want to specify in the ordinances like front door location or distance from the street? Maybe you want to have, sometimes the single-family, other types of housing units, for example, like a townhouse style, they might be closer to the street, but they still have that so they don't have as much of a broad appearance to it. But then the style of the building itself is grand enough that it makes it very attractive. So a lot of architectural detail going into a townhouse style building. But when you look at that, the other thing you might want to look at is how high should the buildings be? So on these larger ones, maybe there could be a potential for a townhouse-style development. I can provide you, between now and the next meeting, examples of different townhouse locations in the area to consider. But there are even different townhouse styles to consider. Some of them have the parking incorporated into the ground floor of the building, and then the height of the building goes up 3, even 4 stories. Is that acceptable or not? There are some that have the parking included in the front of the building with a garage entry in the front, but then it only goes up 2 stories because of the way it's sized and scaled. It's just a 2-story building instead of a 4-story townhouse. Would that be appropriate? But then when it comes to something like that, then if you have each driveway in front, then suddenly you're having a lot of asphalt and a lot of driveway in front very close to each other because the townhouse units are only 30 feet wide typically, at the most. But other aspect maybe you should try and envision is like, all right, how many people do you think could live in each one? Like if you have a townhouse style unit, the depth and the width of it, like I just said, like if it's only 30 foot wide per unit, you have one building. Typically, townhouse buildings have about 8 units in them, from the edge to the edge. So you can go to different locations and see how those relate, and then, you know, if it's a one-bedroom unit, a two-bedroom unit, how many people live in there, and then how many people you think could live on a site that you think could be compatible with the area. One aspect of these maps that I wanted to include is the fact that, you know, some sites are adjacent to other non-residential uses. This is adjacent to the high school. Does that mean that it lends itself more to having more people there and have that transition between, and have that almost act like a buffer between the high school and the residences that are single-family on the other blocks? Maybe it can absorb the sound that way. And then one other aspect of that, I just mentioned it briefly, was looking at where the parking configuration could be. Sometimes the townhouses, typically, I just mentioned some that have a garage, a personal garage in the front. Sometimes it's in the back. If it's in the back, then you have a much more grand view of the building in the front, and then there's common parking in the back. Is that more appropriate? Or is it appropriate on the side?
I mean, 'cause I imagine we might all have different opinions on what that might be, but
Right.
wouldn't there be, I'll say recent developments, like just for example, at Ann Arbor Trail and Heinz Drive, they took that little patch where there used to be an old schoolhouse, they turned it into like a, you know what I'm talking about?
Oh, yeah.
So I don't know.
Right, yeah, no.
Macon Mills.
Yeah, thank you. So I don't know if that's competitive or not, it's interesting. So wouldn't there be examples of where we can see like what surrounding areas have done to develop smaller parcels of land?
Yep, absolutely. And so what I can do is give, you know, like I said, before the next meeting, I give you a map so you can take your own tours of those kind of sites in the area. So you look at the different types of housing. And also, if you, in your own experiences, if you've seen others that might look. And just to get the idea of things, it is intended, this is still the master plan, so it's intended to be broad brush. So it's just about trying to see what aspects you think are important to consider and point out in the master plan that then you will use when we're creating any kind of amendments to the zoning ordinance. So this is one particular type of site. Like I said, there's various ones within the city. The next one is the vacant lots that used to be the Bar 153 parking lots on Crowder, just east of Merriman. They've been vacant for a while as parking lots. They are zoned currently, and these labels and these maps are correct now on this sheet. It is zoned right now multifamily. It is planned multifamily. And I will say that we did have one developer that approached the city attempting to develop the site, but it never got to any official review because the administration just knew what they were proposing was just too ambitious. The number of units they were proposing, the amount of parking spaces they were reducing, even with McKenna's opinion on parking, it was still too ambitious what they were trying to do. They were going to go in too many stories on that lot with that many things. Yeah, yeah.
I have a question, since we're on this lot, how did this lot end up just a parking lot, undeveloped and only a parking lot?
Or it was, you know, actually, it's before my time, so I don't know. All I know is that it used to be the parking lot for Bar 153. And for a while, it was bought and sold with the front property. To the best of my knowledge, currently, it was now then separated. So the Bar 153 redevelopment that's going on currently, that's operating independent of this piece of property.
So I guess my question would be with what we were just talking with that gentleman, with his parking lot being across the street, us having to rezone it, so this was never rezoned just to be a parking lot? Because it's adjacent across the
Yeah.
alley, which it really should have been, to be solely a parking lot.
Right. It could be that, depending on how long ago that was developed,
Where's
it
the
might
new
have
business going to
preceded.
park if this is not a parking lot?
Right, yeah. So I'm not exactly sure how that ever occurred. It's just, up until recently, it was a legal non-conforming use. Because it's been vacant so long, it has no non-conforming status. It only can be used for what's permitted in that district. So it can technically no longer be used as a parking lot under the current zoning. They would have to rezone that as VP in order for it to be a parking for the Bar 153. But it wasn't even part of the property anyway. They got sold separately somehow. They got
It
separated.
was lost through tax foreclosure separately,
Yeah.
acquired by separate people, and just
Yeah.
a taxation thing.
But my point to this particular site is with regards to this, it's in already zoned multifamily. the number of units, I can get to you the number of units that will fit on that lot, but one thing that's interesting about this site, to the west of it, the apartment buildings that already exist, they're developed at a much higher density than the apartments to the east. There's apartments to the east, it's a 2-story, what I call motel-style apartments, because they're accessed via external hallways, not even a hallway, it's just external access porch to each individual one. There's 8 units there, yeah, it's motel style, it's 2 stories, and there's only 8 units on that lot. Next door are 2 separate buildings. Each building, each has a separate entrance with internal corridors that are 23 units in that lot. And then you look at the individual parking that's behind it. None of these have those particular standards of 2.2 parking spaces per unit. How they function, I'll be honest, I haven't heard any complaints, but I'm not sure. I mean, it could be the single-family homes across the street do find problems with those parking. So maybe that's not, maybe like we were talking about, 1.5 might be appropriate.
Probably all parking in that parking lot right now.
Right. Well, that's a very good point. Exactly.
We'll find out.
Actually, it looked on the aerial, and it did say cars parked there. That might have been what it is. So similarly to the questions I just have at the bottom, of just looking at that, looking at the yards that the adjacent buildings have, what do you think would be appropriate there? The other thing about the apartments to the west is that they are 2.5 story. They have it's not a garden apartment, it's technically a basement apartment. Sometimes they might market it as a garden apartment, but a garden apartment is supposed to have access to a garden, and it doesn't have access to a garden. It's just a basement apartment with like the windows that you can get some light in. So my idea with this is there's these and there's other sites along Crowder that have different types of multifamily apartments. So consider what type of multifamily structures you think could be appropriate on that site, and once again, number of people that could live there. And then we can calculate, all right, what density does that mean? And to give you some frame of reference, along Crowder going further east, we have a lot more of what I call ranch house style multifamily. So technically it could be considered it's not really a townhouse because it's 1 story. That's why I call it a ranch house style. Right at the corner there at it's not Dover, in the next street over. There's a house. There's a ranch-style 4-unit building for 4 apartments. It's just a ranch style. It's very simple. They only have 4 parking spaces on the lot, and technically that is at the density that's currently within the zoning ordinance. Technically, I believe. Well, actually, it might be a little less. I think it's 15.6 or 16 dwelling units per acre for the ranch-style apartments. And that's true for most of the ranch style you'll see along Crowder. So if you drive up and down Crowder on this north side, those ranch house apartments, they're the 17 dwelling units per acre. Those are the kinds that we would get as permitted by right in multifamily currently. One other, the next page is one other thing that, it's uncommon sites that you might not think could be redeveloped, but could be. I don't know if you noticed, but, well, I'm sure you noticed. And right now, there is a sign on one of the properties with the house it's for sale. It's currently, the entire site from Ford to Crowder is zoned Central Business District. It's planned for Central Business District on the front parcels and Crowder in the rear. On the rear, Crowder-facing properties are actually planned as multifamily. And, what are the options for that particular site? In the past, for the mini golf, we had someone trying to put a drive-through restaurant on there. That did fell through just because of the applicant not getting cold feet. But could this possibly be developed as multifamily? And if so, right now in our central business district, we don't allow residential on the ground floor. There are different aspects of different housing types that could possibly allow residential on the ground floor. As, for example, in this particular site, maybe you have townhouses in the rear half on Crowder and commercial on the front half, and Ford. So that's just a different type of option. And then that would allow for that transition, even though technically on the north side of Crowder, they're all single-family homes, but it's still zoned multifamily. So, you know, thinking about compatibility, what could that be? And then finally, the last one is just to look at, even, it's not this entire site, but it's to develop to begin the discussion on our deep lots, on our 300-foot deep lots. I thought this was a great example of what probably was supposed to happen, but then never happened. On the west side of this, at Shatka and Dawson in the northwest corner, you see how block was intended to go through, but it stopped. It did not go through. And so then you had homes on, maybe double loaded lots that aren't as deep, but homes there. But then you have the 300-foot deeper lots that were reflective of the historic development of the city, that were the 300-foot deep lots were intended to be your garden lots. People were intended to farm the rear of these 300-foot lots and then use them as either, I think it's more than subsistence farming. They were intended for income for these people when they first did it back in the day. But now they haven't, they never got developed. So in some blocks, we have this mix. If you notice, this is a good example on the west side of Shatka right here. They were able to develop the lots to have single-family homes. But then on the east side of Shatka, the houses are just going north-south. The house is all front on the north or the south road. But then if you notice, just barely, and you'll notice when you drive out, on Henry Ruff, the east side of Henry Ruff, again, you have that entire block was being able to, through negotiation with multiple lot owners, get lots deep enough so they could meet the at-time zoning standards for lot area and lot width.
Which brings me to a question.
Right, yeah.
At our last CBA meeting, we had a problem with a house that wanted to build on a
Right.
lot that wasn't deep enough. And it was because of somebody who split their lot on this
One of the-
type of
Right.
lot and ended up with a lot that was too shallow and as a result needed 2 variances for setbacks.
Right.
And we said at that time that we should have some rules in our ordinance about lot depth. We have
Yeah.
lot width requirements, we have area requirements, we have frontage requirements, but we don't have anything that says how deep it should be.
Yes.
And I think that should be included. Has anything been done towards that?
Well, that'll be part of this discussion right here. It can be, we can do 2 things. We can either include it right now as a zoning ordinance amendment, or we can also, well, at a minimum, I do want to at least include it in the master plan as well. So we might get the cart before the horse in that one and get it approved before it even gets in the master plan. But at least we'll talk about that lot depth. But that's the reason I brought this up, to bring up that issue about how did these other lots get, because if you look on the west side of Shatka right there, some of the lots were able to use 2, and I don't know the underlying plat, but obviously those lots were probably about 100-foot deep maybe. But then on the north half, there's lots that are even deeper than that. So the idea is to talk about what could be done about these 300-foot deep lots in terms of the adjacent roads. Number 1 being look at lot depth, have that standard put into the zoning ordinance, but then also look at what could possibly be done in these areas. The master plan currently does have something that has a different range of what could possibly be done, but obviously that's actually one of the impetuses for the reason we're looking at the master plan now, because none of those seemed feasible, or none of those seemed
I don't think a lot of it's feasible, and I think the whole garden section should be removed from the master plan.
Right. And that's the thing, that this master plan amendment will be doing that. But then it's looking at these larger ones, what, if any.
Where you have a lot on a side street, those lots are accessible if they're deep enough. But we have to have some kind of regulations as far as lot depth, so at least that'll tell the homeowner, if he needs to get his neighbor's cooperation to sell off his lot.
Exactly.
So they can both sell their lots to have a deep enough lot to build a house on.
Right. And that's what's been done in the past, and so, yes, so definitely putting in the zoning ordinance a lot depth requirement will codify what's been done in the past.
So do we have anything in our current ordinance, like over on, Marquette and Wildwood? There's a house over there where there was a house built behind a
Right.
house with a common road. Are we able to do that in the current ordinance we have? If somebody wanted to split the lot and use a common road on these 300-foot deep lots?
No, it's not permitted right now. I will say, if you look at the plat map of the city, and actually you can see one of the, well, no, not really. So there are some other lots of these 300-foot lots, and I don't know how those happened either. Those happened probably a long time ago, where the 300-foot lots were split in half, probably with the intent of having that's a township-style development, where you have what's called a private drive or private driveway that allows, so on the ordinance, people are allowed to develop something that is not a public road standard. It's a driveway, so it would be, 2 inches of asphalt on a regular base that goes to that 150, 200, well, not 200, 150, 200 feet in depth from the road to get a house in the back, for lack of sense purposes. We don't allow, the ordinance doesn't allow that now, because any lot created in the city from now, and any lot that can be with a housing unit, with a home, needs to have frontage on a public road. So, for example, on the north side of, not block, but one block up from Elmwood is the other lot, the other street that doesn't go all the way through. Other people have been trying to develop those, and actually even block right here. See, if you look at block, and it goes through, if people wanted to develop these other behind these other lots that in theory could get access off a block with just a driveway, the only way they could do that if they actually built a road to public road Wayne County standards to extend it to the east, to get frontage on a public road, and then do a lot split and then build homes. Right now, that's what's in our ordinance, and that's what it says. So that's why the rear of those lots that are on Elmwood and Dawson are not developed. If you look at it, on the north side on the lots facing off of Elmwood, the second lot in, there's a flag lot. Typically, it's called a flag lot. They have a lot width that's only, the pole, it's only probably 10 or 20 feet wide, intended for a driveway, and then to the rear is the larger area. Those are, nobody builds those anymore. None of those lots are ever allowed as a development, even in townships. There's minimum requirements for a width to depth ratio or something like that, so that way a flag lot can't be developed, so that way people don't just have a driveway that leads to a single-family home in the rear, just because there's a lot of utility issues and a lot of privacy issues and things like that. But at the time, with deeper lots, and then out in rural areas, that was considered a solution for the development for new housing in these units. And so that was a solution at the time. And I'll be honest with you, every township community that I have, wherever worked in, they don't allow them anymore because they just had too many problems with them. Because either the driveway gets, it's so long, it's not built the right way, and try and make it into a standard. So, and the utilities become an issue and all these other things. And privacy is a big issue. But, people saw these larger, deeper lots and alternatives. What is the solution? So that's the reason I just wanted to point this out to you and see if you thought of something that could be acceptable, or if it's more about, in the current master plan, one of them says is maintain and enhance the benefits of those lots provided, that it provides to the current property owners, and mainly just continue with them as single-family lots that are just very deep and probably too big to mow, too small to farm, unless you want to even if you want to put an orchard on there, you couldn't do that. I don't know. But anyway, it's one of those things that a different style, because we've had that issue come up at the ZBA, because of, at a minimum, it'll develop into lot depth requirements. But if there's anything else in terms of the master plan, in terms of housing alternatives, what you want to do. So like I said, I'm going to be providing you with a detailed list of the different types of housing in the area, also pictures of different housing that you use, and I'd be just interested if next month, if you could provide me with some feedback on what you think is necessary characteristics or necessary policies or goals to include in the master plan based on these type of, based on where, if anywhere, we could have different types of housing.
I just want to comment, my house is in your picture.
Oh, yeah? Which one? Which big?
Mine is one of the 300-foot lots.
Oh, okay.
Mine is south of your square on Dawson. I guess my only, and again, I'm biased because I like my lot, but I just don't know how you would really, it seems like this would be super complicated.
Right.
Like this, just to,
Well, honestly, I mean, that's, as Fred mentioned, right now we have the garden designation in the future land use map. When we did the 5-year assessment of the master plan, looking at the options for those areas, it just, you didn't feel like they met the current needs of residents, such as of the residents, and also of the city. So we have to address it in some way, and even if it is about, like I said, in the end, if it's about ensuring that the current property owners on 300-foot lots benefit from the aspects of that lot provides them, then that's what it is.
So I know we had talked before about like a secondary residence, turning into a garage into a secondary residence. The people with these 300-foot lots, could they build like an in-laws home back there?
So right now, within the master, actually within the zoning areas right now, you are, the modern, well, not modern, it is the standard term for these is called accessory dwelling units. So it's a grandmother suite or something like that. Technically, they are allowed in the city, but in order for someone to do it, they have to come and get special land use approval from planning commission and city council. So whether some, and there are specific requirements, I can't remember the maximum size of them. But honestly, what we've found is whenever they require special use approval, nobody goes through the hassle of going through special use to do them. But I will say that they are something that, you know, a lot of communities are considering now, because it is something, if you design it the right way, if you have the right requirements, such as lot area, minimum lot area, or depth or separation from other structures, other communities have found it acceptable. And other communities want to be more urban, and then they do allow them because it lends to that urban character, like a Ferndale or something like that. But that's not to say they all have to be the same style. You can choose what you feel is appropriate on these type of lots. Right now, the special, not only you have to go through special land use, technically we call them accessory apartment dwellings. They're not allowed to exceed 600 square feet. So the maximum you could have is this one 600 square foot accessory apartment somewhere in the rear of your property. So.
Okay, is there anything else?
No, I've talked enough.
All right, we need schedule public hearings for the following. First one is a public hearing to consider a special land use for a restaurant with drive-through facilities at 28484 Ford Road. This is where the Dunkin' Donuts property
Yes.
was supposed to be.
Yep. It is proposed for a 2-tenant building, one being Dunkin' Donuts.
And it is back before you because it expired.
Yes.
Correct. So
They did come before you,
Fired, and so they're coming back.
They have to come back again.
Do it again, huh?
do it again.
Do we still have, is it the same design as they had before?
Generally speaking, yes. But I will say that we made sure, and they have gone to MDOT to go through and get preliminary comments on their configuration, and MDOT is okay with having 2 driveways, an entrance and an exit off of this site.
Okay. Now we need a motion to schedule a public hearing.
I'll make a motion to schedule a public hearing regarding the property at 28484 Ford Road to consider a special land use for a restaurant with drive-through facilities.
Or,
Any comments or questions of the motion?
No.
Is that Commissioner Steenberg supporting?
No.
Oh, it's Williams? Okay, thank you. Sorry.
Take the roll, please.
Yes, Commissioner King,
Aye.
Commissioner Williams,
all right,
Commissioner Steenberg,
Aye.
Chairperson May.
Aye.
Motion does carry, Mr. Chair.
Next item is public hearing to consider a request to rezone a lot at 30719 Crowder Avenue from R3 Multiple Family Residential to C3 General Business District. There's currently a house on that lot.
Yes.
Do you know what's behind the applicant's request?
The property owner of the building to the south that was just redeveloped for the AB counseling, and they occupy that building, they run that business. They own also the parking lot to the east of this site, and they do want to develop, they want to install a new structure so they can run a medical supply business. Yes, they would demolish the house. And this site is in the master plan is mixed use.
And what they're proposing requires a C3?
Yes. Yes.
For medical?
Well, it would be a spot zone if we went to anything else.
Right.
Correct. So it's extending the C3 north. Correct?
That's what let me just confirm that. That's what I wanted to make sure. Because I don't, where is?
Yes, it would be north.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm just trying to find the map.
Right now, the house is between like two parking lots.
Yep.
Well, there's a apartment building to the west, right?
Yes.
It might be, I'm not sure what that is to the west, but to the north, yes.
But anyway, it's,
Yes.
Yeah,
there's
it's
a-
two apart.
it would be in the middle of a residential area.
Forgive me, that might be a typo on my part on the notice. The applicant, I'll make sure that the applicant had the right thing, but actually it's C2 on the south. So a C2 would permit the medical business. And your motion would just be scheduling the public hearing for a rezoning, and I would just confirm with the applicant what their proposed zoning would be, and actually C2 would be the more appropriate rezoning, because it would be consistent with property to the south, and it would not be a spot zone. So C2 is probably what they have on their application, and I just have that as an error on the.
Okay, so we don't have to specify C3, just rezoning. Somebody want to make a motion to schedule a public hearing for that?
I'll make a motion to schedule a public hearing to consider a request to rezone the lot at 30719 Crowder.
Support?
Support.
Questions on the motion?
None.
Take the roll, please.
Yes. Commissioner Williams.
Aye.
Commissioner King.
Aye.
Commissioner Steenberg.
Aye.
Chairperson May.
Aye.
The motion does carry, Mr. Chair.
Okay, comments regarding planning and zoning matters. Mr. Ortega, you have anything for us?
Nothing more.
Nothing more? Mr. Steenberg?
Nothing, thank you.
Kelly?
I'm good.
I'm good.
Frank, you good? Matt, anything?
Just one item that a lot of people call about is the Golden Feather. And I talked today to the developer, and they're moving forward. It's been quite a long road, and they do have, the permits have been approved, and for all of the trades, they still need to do plumbing. Electrical started, permit was pulled on May 2nd, so they're starting to really, they've done a lot of internal work, demolition, all of that, saw cutting floors to fix drains, all of that kind of work that you wouldn't see. So again, I just made contact with him because it had been a while since I talked to him, and I thought, let's see what's going on over there. And they're still planning to go forward. He wants to get work done that you will see, of course, soon. And it's not dead in the water. And he's planning to continue to do it for that school, the science, technology, engineering, math school. So it is going forward.
I thought it was going to be a daycare.
Or daycare, yeah, I'm sorry, yeah, yes.
Oh, okay,
Daycare, yeah,
that's right.
sorry.
thought
School,
you were-
nursery school, yeah, sorry,
Yeah.
yes.
Went from daycare to STEM.
Correct. Well, it is, but it's the
Actually,
STEM,
that's-
it
yeah.
is a focus for, it is
It
a
is.
nursery school focused on that.
Oh, really?
It is
Okay.
STEM, yes.
For parents who want to push their kids into
Yes,
science.
exactly, exactly.
Maybe they don't want them to take out a daycare, they want to keep on going, like, all right, stay in school, stay there.
Yeah.
Because it's something similar to across the street, the Paramount Accounting, which is associated with the medical business in Dearborn. They also, the special land use approved for them is not only going to be, originally they were looking at daycare, but now they are looking at having a higher level of education for, I don't know, it's not toddlers, I don't know, it's
Maybe 4-year-olds. or
pre-K, maybe? I think, it's a pre-K.
Wasn't that just going to be for their own employees? though?
Originally, yes, but because of the licensing that they needed to get, I guess there's an opportunity to develop pre-K education there.
Okay.
And so they're looking into it. And that's why they haven't developed anything just yet. They did get their special use approval from council. And for us, a daycare center is any licensed facility for more than 20 children. So whatever number they have there, if they choose a different route, they can do it there too. So apparently it's becoming a thing.
Okay, are they using that building now, or?
They're using it for the accounting, they're doing they used it for the accounting, and I think now they're doing some renovations, the renovations they wanted to do to,
The office spaces.
yeah, because they originally were in there, because they just needed more spaces for the tax season. But now the tax season's done, they're going to make it more comfortable for themselves.
Both my grandkids in Florida, I just got back, they're in a STEM class.
Oh, yeah.
STEM and multiple languages. My 3-year-old granddaughter is learning sign language, Spanish, and English all at the same time.
Oh, wow.
She's in a class where they only speak Spanish
Yeah.
3 out of 5 days. And then they do sign language on one day and English.
I know my granddaughter went through a program in Garden City schools where she learned Japanese.
Wow.
She ended up taking Japanese all the way through college and going to Japan after she graduated for a while.
Wow, that's great.
So those classes they have here do mean something, I guess.
Yeah, I guess so.
Do you have anything else,
No, that's it.
Kelly?
No, I'm good for tonight, thank you.
Brian? Okay.
What you're saying about Garden City schools, my daughter's co-director of emergency planning and management for Miami-Dade County,
Oh,
graduate of Garden
Garden
City,
City, yeah.
NYU, and Georgetown.
good for her.
Yeah.
All right. Our next regular meeting will be Thursday, June 12th, 2025. Do we have a motion to adjourn?
Motion.
to adjourn.
Support.
Motion's made and seconded.
Second.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Meeting's adjourned.